Of course, members of the House leadership are out there rallying members to come in and participate in the session this morning. And just noting that the National Assembly and the sittings have also had their fair share of disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as such, there have been various measures taken. The regular sanitizing of hands, washing of hands, social distancing, which is very, very important in these times. And as evident in the sitting arrangement in the House, members donning face masks. Those are just some of the precautions, the health protocols set aside by the Ministry of Health to contain the spread of the novel coronavirus.
Honorable members, 10 minutes are over. We are just short of 4 members. 4 members. So the whips can have an extra 5 minutes. I actually see 1 member coming, so 3 more members, because we have confirmed that there are 12 in the other holding area. So 3 more members, and then we'll be starting our business.
So the House yet to attain that quorum that is much, much needed in order for business to commence this morning. Actually, about a handful of members needed. And there it is, we do have a quorum this morning. Enjoy the proceedings.
Oh, now we have the required quorum, so then business will start.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
On that particular order, we have the leader of Majority Party.
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 9th of June, in the morning sitting. Number 1, the annual report of the Capital Markets Authority for the financial year 2019-2020. Number 2, the annual corporate report of the Office of the Auditor General for the year 2019-2020. Number 3, the report of the Auditor General for the National Government for the year 2019-2020. Number 4, the reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th of June 2020 and the certificates therein. Number 1, the Presidency. 2, the State Department for Planning. Number 3, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Number 4, the State Department for Information, Communication, Technology and Innovation. Number 5, the State Department for Sports. Number 6, the Equalization Fund. Number 7, revenue statements for the Ministry of Lands and Fiscal Planning. Number 8, the State Department for Industrialization. Number 9, the African Union and other international organizations subscription fund. Number 10, Kipchambo Tea Factory. Number 11, State Officers and Public Officers Motor Car Loan Scheme Fund. Number 12, the Ministry of Water and Sanitation. Number 13, State Department of Tourism. Number 14, the State Department for Shipping and Maritime. Number 15, National Government Constituency Development Fund, Central Bank of Kenya account. Number 16, the Parliamentary Catering Fund. 17, Business Registration Service, official receiver. Number 18, Revenue Statements Recurrent of the National Treasury. Number 19, the National Treasury. 20, Kenya Reinsurance Corporation Limited. 21, Office of the Control of Budget. Number 22, State Department for Vocational and Technical Training. Number 23, Commodities Fund. Number 24, Consolidated Fund Services, subscriptions to international organizations. Number 25, Veterinary Services Development Fund. 26, the State Department for Fisheries, Aquaculture and the Blue Economy. Number 27, Revenue Statement for the State Law Office and the Department of Justice. Number 28, the State Department for Crop Development. 29, COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund. Number 30, the State Department for Interior. 31, State Department for Petroleum. Number 32, National Land Commission. And lastly, the Petroleum Training Levy Fund. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. So we go to the next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
This particular order, we will start with the member for Luanda, the Honorable Mulele.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 181 of 2021 to the Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Culture and Heritage. Roman 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status of the account of the funds collected under the Sports Fund established under the Sports Act 2013? Roman 2, could the Cabinet Secretary also give an account of the funds that the National Sports Fund Board has spent, and particularly in the establishment and construction of new sports stadia and sports academies in the country? Roman 3, could the Cabinet Secretary explain whether the Chief Executive Officer of the National Sports Fund Board is duly qualified, duly gazetted, and authorized to execute the mandate of the board as stipulated in the Sports Act 2013? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, that one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism. Then we go to the member for Loima, Honorable Lemurukai, has requested that his question be deferred, and it will be deferred. So we go to the nominated member, Honorable Gideon Keter. Honorable Keter. Keter was in here a few minutes ago. Well, we will give the next member once he comes in, because I knew he had a problem with his card, which he has gone to rectify. Let us have the member for the Rakanivi. That is the Honorable Beatrice Nyaga. Mkatha. Proceed, Honorable Beatrice Nyaga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. My question is number 151 of 2021, and it is directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and the Coordination of National Government. Roman 1, what urgent and long-term steps is the ministry taking to ensure that mandatory government services provided by authority such as the National Transport and the Safety Authority, that is NTSA, the Kenya Revenue Authority, that is KRA, and the PWD assessment offices are brought closer and within the reach of residents of the Rakanidi County who have traveled for long distances to seek the said services, as they are not available in the county. Roman 2, could the Cabinet Secretary give an undertaking that such services alongside other government services will be made within the Rakanidi County? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security. Next is the member for Kwanza, the Honorable Anyonyi.
Mr. Speaker, I just come in and not with Akanaiko, and I do it later.
What is the problem, the Honorable Wanyonyi? You know you are a seasoned member. You don't have the order paper?
No.
You can be helped to have that one. We really don't need to. There's nothing to prepare on this particular one. This one is just a straightforward issue. Of course, I understand the fact that, but as you prepare yourself, let's go to the next member. Member for, no, I see the Honorable Member has reached where he can actually ask his question. Proceed and ask your question.
Mr. Speaker, my question is number 167.
The norm now, Honorable Wanyonyi, is that you put your mask on, even as you ask the question. I know how uncomfortable it is.
Yes, sir.
But it's more uncomfortable to be in a ventilator.
My question to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, and Urban Development. Could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status of the expansion and reconstruction works at Kitale Airstrip? Could the Cabinet Secretary indicate when the airstrip is expected to be completed and made operational to facilitate the transport for the many users from the North Rift, Western region who use this facility? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hello. So that one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing. Next is the Honorable Kingi. But I see Honorable Keteri is here. So let's go to Honorable Kingi as we try and locate where you are sitting, if he's in. Yes, proceed, Honorable Kingi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question 170 of 2021 to the Cabinet Secretary for Energy. Roman 1, could the Cabinet Secretary provide a list of all projects funded through the Rural Electrification Authority in Magarin Sub-County from 2017 to date? Roman 2, are there any plans to connect electricity to Galana Teachers Training College, Waresa Technical College, Kambicha Primary and other government institutions in Magarin Sub-County, taking into account the many requests which have been made to the ministry since 2018? Roman 3, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that the learning institutions, market centers and villages which are yet to have electricity in Magarin constituency are connected soonest? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. That one will be replied to before the Committee on Energy. Next is a member for Imenti, North Imenti. That is the Honorable Dawood Abdul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask question number 174 of 2021, and it's directed, I think, wrongly to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport, but I'll just read it and then I'll ask for your guidance. Number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the criteria intended to be applied by the National Transport Safety Authority, NTSA, to conduct vehicle inspection exercises in the country following the recent circular, which affected Section 16(2) of the Traffic Act, requiring all vehicles above 4 years to be inspected? 2, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the total number of vehicles expected to undergo inspection in the country and stipulate the measures the Ministry has put in place to ensure order during the inspection exercise? 3, could the Cabinet Secretary also explain how owners of motor vehicles will access the inspection units and provide details of the approved inspection units, their working hours, booking criteria, the number of vehicles to be inspected per day, and charges, if any? Mr. Speaker, this question ordinarily should be directed to the Committee on Administration, because NTSA, the budget is under the Transport Committee, but operationalization is under the National Coordination Ministry, like what my sister from Tharaka, Mheshimiwa Beatrice, has asked. The NTSA is under the Interior. So I want your guidance whether this will go to Transport and Infrastructure or to the National Administration? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, this ordinarily, as you put it clearly, is supposed to be at the foot of the Transport, Public Works and Housing Committee, which you actually sit. I do not know whether the chair of Administration and National Security is in the House. I don't see him. But on this, yes, what is it again? I thought you have made your case, so I'm trying to rule on it.
Yes, Chair, because I'm in the Committee of Transport, and this thing we tried to tackle it while the NTSA was in the committee coming for the budget, and we were told it was not under us as the ministry.
Okay, so then it is referred to the Committee on Security, Administration and National Security. Now let's go to the member for Kaiti. He has actually made a request that the question be deferred, and I proceed to defer that particular question. The Honorable Manje also has made a similar request, which I accept. So we go to them, and then that is over. We are through with questions. So we go to the next segment of that particular order. Oh, yes. I almost forgot the Honorable Keter. Proceed, Honorable Keter, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Industry and Trade and Cooperatives that could the Cabinet Secretary explain the measures that have been taken by the Kenya Bureau of Standards to ensure that used motor vehicle parts such as vehicle airbags, steering assembles, braking systems, and other parts imported into the country for reuse as spare parts are of sound quality and approved standards. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain why KBC is allowing high-end vehicles such as Toyota Land Cruiser V8 models imported from UAE, United Arab Emirates, to be inspected locally, whereas there is a KBC appointed inspection agent for motor vehicles in Dubai? What steps is the Cabinet Secretary taking to ensure that the Market Surveillance Division at KBC has the capability of carrying out its mandate of vetting and approving products to ensure that they meet the set Kenyan standards and inspections and specifications? Could the Cabinet Secretary also provide details of the local or locally owned inspections agents that have been contracted by KBC under the pre-export verification of conformity program, which have been in operation since September 2005, and explain how they are regulated? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That one will be replied to before the Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. So we go to the next segment of that particular order, which is statements, request for statements and response to statements. We will start with the request, and I start with the member for Turkana East, the Honorable Okiru Mohammed Ali.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask a statement on resurgence of cattle raids and killings in Turkana East. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 44, 2C, I seek to request for a statement from the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security regarding resurgence of raids and killings in Kapedo area in Turkana East constituency. Honorable Speaker, since the security operation was stopped at Kapedo area, there has been resurgence of raids and killings of innocent civilians by armed bandits from Tiati, Baringo County, and Sigor in West Pokot County. Several incidences have been reported, and nothing has been done by the authorities. Mr. Speaker, just to mention a few, Honorable Speaker, on 12th of March 2021, a raid took place at Riet village where 3 people were killed namely Ekatapan Loyolel, Looi Loyolel, Etelej Loyolel. In the said incident, 3,000 shots were taken and 127 cows, 57 camels. On 30th of April 2021, a raid at Nguluke again was reported and 2 people were killed, Ekale Kakinor and Eturen Locham, and 1 injured, 1 Umana Lokwawi. On 4th of May 2021, 1 person again was injured 100 meters from the GSU camp in Lokori, and 340 goats were taken away. On 15th of May 2021, 1 Ekitela Lopusngole was killed, while over 2,400 goats and 70 cows were taken in red area. On that of June 2021 again, a raid happened at Lomelo. 2 people were killed, Lomoit Longor and Longor Ebunu. 3 other people were seriously injured. Mr. Speaker, on 7th of June 2021, a raid again was conducted at Lopi, where 2 children were kidnapped but later rescued. 127 camels were taken, 4,000 goats and 60 head of cattle. Mr. Speaker, even yesterday, Mr. Speaker, all the security vehicles in Turkana East were destroyed by these bandits, including an armored vehicle and an injury to one of the police officers. Honorable Speaker, there has been no effort so far done to apprehend the bandits and even to recover the stolen livestock. It appears this has become a normal business.
Just a minute, Honorable Ali. I think it is your phone which is probably ringing. So you probably need to switch it off so that it does not distort your thought. Now, by the fact that we can hear it on mic, it means it's yours. Yeah. So then you can proceed. Give him the mic. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, there has been no effort so far done to apprehend the bandits and even to recover the stolen livestock. It appears this has become a normal business. It's against this background that I seek a statement from the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security on the following. 1, what measures the government is taking to address the resurgence of race conflict among communities in Baringo East, West Pokot, and Turkana East? And could the Chairperson also explain the measures the government has put in place to stop further raids? 2, what efforts are in place to recover the stolen animals and arrest the perpetrators of such raids? And 3, Mr. Speaker, what urgent steps are in place to assist communities in those areas to manage and utilize the available resources and address the conflicts arising from the boundaries? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Let's get the chairperson or his vice chair to know about what time they will require to respond to that particular statement. Well, both of them are absent, so the leader of majority, we probably expect that it should take 2 weeks. 2 weeks. So it will be responded within 2 weeks. Now let's go to the response to statements. The first one is by the Honorable Tom Mboya, member for Nyatike constituency. The chair, of course, being absent to take, it means is not available also to answer this one. So can we shift it to probably tomorrow? Actually the afternoon. And then the next one also I think is by the same chair, responding to the Honorable Colonel retired Geoffrey Kingangi. That one also should be responded to in the afternoon. And the leader majority, we request that you ask the specific chair to be available to respond to those statements in the afternoon of today. So then we go to the next order.
Order number 8, the Higher Education Loans Board Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2020, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Higher Education Loan Boards Act and for connected purposes. Order number 9, the Exercise Duty Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 42 of 2020, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Excise Duty Act. Order number 10, the Kenya Deposit Insurance Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 43 of 2020, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Kenya Deposit Insurance Act and for connected purposes. Order number 11, the National Construction Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 45 of 2020, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the National Construction Act and for connected purposes. Order number 12, the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 49 of 2020, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. Order number 13, the Pharmacy and Poisons Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 1 of 2021, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Pharmacy and Poisons Act. Order number 14, the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 11 of 2021, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act. Order number 15, the Health Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2021, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Health Act and for connected purposes. Order number 16, consideration of the budget statements for the financial year 2021-2022, general debate, first allotted day.
Now, on this particular one, of course, the chairperson, Budget and Appropriation Committee, will be taking the floor. And on the particular request you've made, I would request that you come to a place where you are very sure that you are in a is it a no man's zone? Yeah. I think you'll still be comfortable there. You are farthest from everybody. Unfortunately, you are coming closer to me, which is not okay, but because this is a very critical issue, we will have to make do with it. Proceed, the Honorable Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker, and thanks so much for your indulgence. Honorable Speaker, I've already gotten my second jab, so I'm still a bit safer. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the budget estimates for the national government, the judiciary, and the parliament for the financial year 2021-2022, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, June 8th, 2021, and pursuant to provisions of Article 221 of the Constitution, Section 39 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, and a standing order 239. Honourable Speaker, A, approves the issuance of a sum of Kenya shilling 671,474,883 from the Consolidated Fund to meet the expenditure during the year ending 30th June 2022 in respect of the votes contained in the first schedule to the order paper subject to paragraph C, that is a committee of supply, and B, makes the policy and financial resolutions contained in the second schedule to the order paper, and C, orders that they, quote, the Speaker do now leave the chair, and quote, to facilitate the consideration of the said budget estimates with respect to each vote and programs in the Committee of Supply as contemplated under a standing order 240, that is consideration of estimates in the Committee of Supply. The rest are as the annual estimates are as in the order paper. Honorable Speaker, as I make my submission and as I move, Honorable Speaker, I will delve more on the general overview of the budget, and I will leave the individual allocation of these various state departments to the various chairs of committees who appeared also before us, and I would later want to give them also an opportunity to also expound on the same. Honorable Speaker, on behalf of the members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and as mandated by Article 221 of the Constitution, Section 39 of the Public Finance Management Act, it is my pleasure to present to this House the report of the estimates of the revenue and expenditure for this financial year. Honorable Speaker, the 2021-2022 budget estimates were submitted to Parliament on Thursday, 29th April 2021. Equally, the Parliamentary Service Commission and the Judiciary independently tabled their estimates in line with Article 127, 6C, and 173(3) of the Constitution, respectively. Pursuant to Article 221(4) of the Constitution, the 2021-2022 budget estimates were committed to the Budget and Appropriations Committee, as well as the departmental committees of the National Assembly, for review in line with their respective mandate. After reviewing the budgets of the various ministries, departments, and agencies within their purview, the departmental committees were required to submit their recommendations to Budget and Appropriations Committee for consideration and inclusion in this report. Mr. Speaker, I want to confirm to this House that we had an engagement with all the departmental committees, and for the first time, most of their recommendations have been carried, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in examining the budget estimates and in reviewing the 2021-2022 budget estimate, the committee held 14 sittings, including 2 meetings with the National Treasury, where extensive deliberations were held. The committee also held discussions with the Parliamentary Service Commission, and the Office of the Auditor General, and critically reviewed their budgets. The outcome of these deliberations have informed the various recommendations which are contained in this report. Honorable Speaker, the committee also received submissions from departmental committees highlighting significant policy and financial recommendations of the budget of the various ministries, departments, and agencies within their purview. If approved by this House, these recommendations will form the basis for the passage of the Appropriations Bill for the financial year 2021-2022. The consolidated report of the departmental committees, as well as summary of their observations and policy recommendations, are contained in Annexure 1 and 2 of this report. Honorable Speaker, Article 221(5) of the Constitution requires the Budget Committee to seek the views of the public on the budget and take their recommendations into account, Honorable Speaker, when finalizing this report. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person public gathering, for the second year running, the committee held a virtual public participation exercise whereby the public was required to submit their views through written memorandums highlighting their areas of concern and key expenditure priorities. Honorable Speaker, in line with an already established tradition of addressing key expenditure priorities for 12 selected counties in each financial year, the committee specifically sought the views of the public on the key expenditure priorities for the following counties: Kilifi, Mandera, Meru, Machakos, Nyandarua, Kiambu, Elgeyo Marakwet, Nandi, Baringo, Vihiga, Siaya, and Nairobi counties. Notably, Honorable Speaker, the submissions were also received from the following: Bogwa Mreithi and Co. advocates and the Clean Cooking Association of Kenya, highlighting various concerns on matters of public finance. The summary of the public hearing is in Annexure 3 of this report. Mr. Speaker, I want to confirm to this House that with the conclusion of these 12 counties, we will have covered the entire country in the last 5 years. So each and every part of this country, Mr. Speaker, has been able to participate in the public hearing. Honorable Speaker, we made a few observations, of course, arising from the interactions with the departmental committees. A huge issue, one, Mr. Speaker, is the pending bills. That despite the presidential directive in June 2019 that all pending bills by government agencies be cleared immediately, they continue to present a significant challenge in almost all sectors of the budget. It is noted that the veracity of some of these, of course, these pending bills is also in doubt. Mr. Speaker, each and every committee that came before us, they had a huge list of pending bills, verified and others unverified. Mr. Speaker, just pick one. NYS has a pending bill of 16 billion shillings. That's one agency. And Mr. Speaker, there is hue and cry everywhere that government is not paying. And it is a challenge that we are throwing to Treasury, because pending bills should always at all times be the first charge, but unfortunately it's not happening. Honorable Speaker, two, there is the issue of stalled projects. This has become a permanent feature in our budget. There is no adherence to project guidelines issued by the National Treasury, including introduction of new projects before completion of existing ones, despite the thin spread of resources. Honorable Speaker, a policy must be implemented to ensure enforcement of the PFM and Treasury guidelines. Sanctions should be instituted to MDAs that introduce new projects before completion of existing projects. Mr. Speaker, each and every budget, there is always this Mitihani house, in South Sea that was started about 40 years ago. We even have our own buildings here, Mr. Speaker. We have Kirdi. Everywhere, literally everywhere in the country, you will find buildings that are totally not complete, and each and every year, there is allocation of money. That one, Mr. Speaker, must be concluded. Mr. Speaker, the third one is on duplication of functions. We observe that there is overlap of functions between some spending agencies as well as between some programs. There needs to be streamlining of functions which will cruciate to eliminate duplication and reduce resource wastage. Mr. Speaker, there is also failure of the medium-term expenditure framework, Mr. Speaker. There appears to be very little focus on the medium-term budget, despite the MTEF process requiring budgeting process to focus on a 3-year rolling plan in order to ensure predictability of the budget. Poor planning, of course, of MTEF is partially attributed to the failure to adopt to the initial weak budget systems, as well as limited institutional capacity. Mr. Speaker, the situation is made worse by inadequate support and agency buy-in for their mode of budgeting. Mr. Speaker, having made those recommendations, Mr. Speaker, I now want to focus on the macroeconomic framework underpinning this year's budget, Mr. Speaker. The proposed budget is anchored on a GDP growth projection of 6.3% in the financial year 2021-2022 and a 6.1% over the medium term. Mr. Speaker, the key drivers of this growth are a stable macroeconomic environment, improved domestic consumption, and improved external demands. Further, export demand is expected to increase due to the opening of economies globally as global vaccination continues to gain traction. Honorable Speaker, even though this economic growth projection is plausible, the committee is concerned that some of the growth fundamentals are potentially weak. For instance, given the current economic condition, private consumption has reduced considerably due to increased unemployment and income losses, and this may persist through 2021. A prolonged pandemic, Mr. Speaker, will also delay the full recovery of tourism and also hospitality industry. Honorable Speaker, further there are concerns that the budget allocations are not really addressing simply side constraint pertaining to exports, and this may severely constrain the country's export earning potential. Kenya export quality has largely remained unchanged, with the countries exporting most low primary products as opposed to manufactured goods. Honorable Speaker, other risks to the macroeconomic outlook include the rising fuel prices, the foreign exchange rate fluctuations, political uncertainty, Mr. Speaker, as the country approaches the general election, and the possibility of introduction of strict COVID containment measures in the second quarter of 2021. If these risks materialize, then the economic growth may be lower than the projected, and this will further constrain the resource envelope. Honorable Speaker, we just want to now look at the key highlights of the budget. Mr. Speaker, the overall budget for the financial year 2021-2022 is estimated to be 3.66 if you look at it below the line, or 3.03 trillion if it is above the line. Of course, the 600 billion shillings difference is basically the provision for the foreign debt redemption provision, Mr. Speaker, with the current expenditure amounting to 1.29 trillion and development expenditure at 666.5 billion shillings. In terms of the budget for the three arms of government, the budget for the executive is estimated at 1.895 trillion. Parliament gave a proposal, Mr. Speaker, of 46.61. However, of course, through consideration of the committee, it was capped at 37.88 billion, and the judiciary at 17.92 billion shillings. Mr. Speaker, the committee observed that the overall budget estimates for the financial year 2021-2022 has slightly exceeded the approved 2021-2022 budget policy statement, ceiling by Kenya shilling 14.11 billion. This is mostly on account of increased consolidated fund services spending, of course, which also, of course, went to about 20.83 billion. Parliament also had burst the ceiling in their recommendations with 8.7 billion shillings. For most of the other sectors, however, Mr. Speaker, the net changes do not differ significantly from the approved BPS ceilings. You remember, Mr. Speaker, it is this same house that approved the BPS, and we say that we have to remain within the BPS ceilings. This is notable departure, Mr. Speaker, from the past where BPS ceilings were routinely flouted, and the budget increased in total disregard of the approved budget framework. Mr. Speaker, for the first time, we want to commend the National Treasury for this effort. Honorable Speaker, with regard to the policy direction of the 2021-2022 budget, the committee notes that despite the government implementing of a post-COVID-19 economic recovery strategy, ERS, the key performance indicators and targets for the next financial year have not been clearly articulated and specified in the proposed budget. This makes it difficult for the government to monitor the programs being implemented under the post-COVID ERS. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, there is no evidence that broad policy objectives, particularly with regard to sustainable development goals, have been factored into the budget. Implementation of the SDGs is crucial as they are designed to end poverty and enhance sustainable growth. Honorable Speaker, furthermore, this being the final year of implementing of the Big Four agenda, the current administration, the committee is concerned that the full benefit of the Big Four agenda may not be realized by 2022. It is therefore important for the strategies that will be implemented beyond 2022, notably the fourth medium-term plan, that is MTP 4 of the Vision 2030, to include full completion of programs and projects under the Big Four agenda. Honorable Speaker, it is observed that the format of the presentation of the budget of the 2021-2022 budget and the medium term is such that there is no effective budget challenge function taking place. Specifically, the review of the ongoing projects or programs has not been provided, therefore making the budget simply incremental. The committee knows that the poor management of capital projects has led to some projects being permanently on the budget, Mr. Speaker. The issue of pending bills, Mr. Speaker, and stalled projects continue to present a significant challenge in almost all sectors of the budget. For the most part, this is the outcome of poor planning, budget cuts, and expenditure adjustments during the supplementary budget process. No clear roadmap, Mr. Speaker, has been provided by the National Treasury on how effectively they can be able to conclude these matters. Honorable Speaker, while the committee appreciates the need to place certain key projects or programs under seemingly high-performing ministries, there is concern that there might be a major problem in the flow of exchequer on timely basis. It is noted that in the next financial year, the National Treasury will become an implementing agency for projects such as the Dogokudu Special Economic Zone, SGR, Naivasha, Mombasa Port Development Project, LAPSET Project, Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company. The National Treasury may find it difficult to strike a balance between being the implementer of public finance and also being a sectoral implementer of these infrastructural projects, Mr. Speaker. The committee notes with concerns that after tabling of the budget in Parliament, the National Treasury has formed a perpetual habit of submitting additional changes to the budget, which is under scrutiny by the legislature, hence creating difficulties in arriving at the final budget. Mr. Speaker, you also remember when we were also dealing with the supplementary budget one, there was another addendum that was brought on top of a supplementary. This net effect of the proposed changes to the 2021-2022 budget by the National Treasury has resulted in an overall reduction of the budget with 8.9 billion shillings. Honorable Speaker, how are we going to finance the 2021-2022 budget? Honorable Speaker, the National Treasury projects a total revenue collection of Kenya shilling 2.039 billion in 2021-2022, an increase by approximately 200 billion shillings from the previous year, Honorable Speaker. Of this, the ordinary revenue will constitute 1.77 trillion shilling compared to 1.57 this current year. Income tax, which accounts for approximately 50% of the tax revenue, is projected to increase by 102 billion shillings and an amount of 835 billion in the financial year 2021-2022. On the other hand, VAT is projected at 473 billion shillings, excise duty at 241 billion, and import duty at 119 billion shillings, compared to 395 billion, 209 billion, and 96 billion shillings, respectively, in the year 2021. Though the revenue projections, Mr. Speaker, appear to be conservative and have complied with the IMF benchmark, it should be noted that the expected revenue performance is based on the sustained economic recovery in the economic performance. Should the risk to the growth outlook highlighted, which I did mention before, that is a microeconomic framework underpinning that, if it is not realized, then it means that we might have lower projected tax revenue, Honorable Speaker. The committee notes with concern that the tax enhancement measures contained within the budget policy statement of 2021, such as strengthening the audit functions in the domestic tax department, enhancing scanning, resolution of tax dispute through alternative dispute resolution, and fast-tracking the conclusion of cases before the tax appeal tribunal do not address the structural issues that have contributed to the decline in revenue as a share of economic activity. Honorable Speaker, further, the proposal contained the Finance Bill 2021 are unlikely to significantly contribute to the increase in revenue as share of GDP. If revenue underperforms, it will lead to expansion of the fiscal deficit and a likely increase of the public debt levels. Honorable Speaker, going forward, the National Treasury projections significantly higher in all the major revenue categories in the financial year 2021, 2022, and the medium term. Consequently, the fiscal deficit, Mr. Speaker, as a share of GDP, excluding grants, is expected to be about 8.2. Including grants, it will be 7.7%. Honorable Speaker, the committee notes that without a comprehensive strategy by the National Treasury to enhance revenue collection, it is unlikely that the fiscal deficit for the medium term will be attained. Notably, Honorable Speaker, continuous expansion of fiscal deficit has put the country off the trajectory towards EAC convergence criteria, which targets, among other criteria, a ceiling on fiscal deficit, including grants, at 3% of GDP by 2021. Honorable Speaker, the other concern is on the consolidated fund services. The consolidated fund services will amount to Kenya shilling 1.3 trillion shillings in the financial year 2021-2022. For the first time, the consolidated fund services will surpass the recurrent budget that we have had. This is a 24% increase. That is by 253 billion from the financial year 2020 to 2021 levels, and is primarily on account of increased public debt servicing expense, which presently constitute approximately 88% of all the CFS service expenditures. Honorable Speaker, by end of March 2021, the public and public guaranteed stock of debt amounted to Kenya shilling 7,334 billion, representing 82% of the 9 trillion national debt ceiling. The committee is concerned that the financial year 2021-2022 budget may not be implementable if the debt ceiling is not adjusted. The committee is concerned that the increase in CFS expenditure is contributing to a growing budget inflexibility. Honorable Speaker, in the financial year 2021-2022, it is estimated CFS will account for about 43% of the total annual budget and 65% of the total revenue collected, with a fiscal constraint worsening in the outer years. Indeed, a 5-year review indicates that by the financial year 2021-2022, the CFS, or the consolidated fund services, will be increased by over 50% in absolute terms. Since financial year
Chairperson, I hope you are aware that you have about 5 minutes to go.
Honorable Speaker,
I know how difficult it is to summarize, but you already have done 26 minutes actually.
Honorable Speaker, I'm just about to conclude, Honorable Speaker. Thank you so much. Honorable Speaker, there is a concern, of course, in the growing pension obligations, which is attributed to many years of non-implementation of contributory pension plans. In the financial year 2021-2022, the financial obligations are estimated to be 153.6. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, I want to highlight a few policy recommendations. One, that the National Treasury should set up a fund that may be financed through long-term bonds for the payment of existing verified pending bills and court awards. The funds should be in place, Honorable Speaker, by the 1st of October 2021. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, there should be an infrastructural board. There are so many pending bills in the Ministry of Infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, if that one, of course, is done, definitely we'll be able to offset some of the debts that we have. And what we have also indicated, Mr. Speaker, is that a debt is a debt. Whether it's a foreign debt or a local debt to a contractor, they should all be treated the same. Honorable Speaker, on the financial recommendation, because of the constraints of time, Honorable Speaker, after extensive deliberations, the committee recommends that Kenya shilling 1.2 billion be set aside to fund projects arising from public hearings. This expenditure should also be domiciled under specific ministries. Mr. Speaker, on the financial recommendations, the Budget and Appropriations Committee received substantial additional requests from departmental committees amounting to 85.7 billion shillings to meet various expenditure shortfalls. However, due to the prevailing resource constraints and the need to contain the physical deficit within a certain limit, the committee could not finance most of these recommendations. However, Mr. Speaker, we have agreed with most of the reallocations that were done within the committees. The committee therefore resolves also that a reduction of Kenyan shilling 20,328,000 be effected from the votes and programs as shown in Schedule 1 and 2, and of course justification provided. And additional, Mr. Speaker, that the same amount be increased in the votes as shown in the Schedule 1 and 2. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, the allocation for Parliament will be capped at 37,882,700. Honorable Speaker, we also had requests from Parliament, which of course, due to the fiscal constraints, Honorable Speaker, they could not be contained. The third one is allocation to the judiciary. The allocation to judiciary will be capped at 17,833,000,000. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move, Honorable Speaker, and as I said from the onset, we will have committee chairs who will delve more on the allocation of departmental committees, and I request the Honorable Dr. Makali to second. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Dr. Makali, and I'm sure you are aware about the timelines that you have for seconding, so proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'm aware of about 10 minutes, so I will see how to manage within the 10 minutes, although it is going to be very difficult. But, Honorable Speaker, I must start by thanking my chairman for that good moving of the motion, as well as thanking my colleagues in the Budget Committee for really doing a thorough job on these budget proposals, and the departmental committees for their input, Honorable Speaker. It was not easy to make this budget, Honorable Speaker, I must say. And this is,
order, who are these two members?
This is basically
standing just behind the leader majority.
Yeah, this is
and not observing the rules of containment, social distance. They actually are not from the same house. So let's proceed, Dr. Makali.
Yeah, Honorable Speaker, I hope my few seconds will be compensated. Honorable Speaker, what I'm saying is it was not easy to make this budget, and more so based on the prevailing conditions in the country and also in the world. But Honorable Speaker, I would want to say that basically, when you look at the economic fundamentals informing this budget, generally they are quite strong,
Order.
And Honorable Speaker, despite the few risks which my chair has mentioned, I think what members need to note is if the assumptions underlying the budget do not really get changed as we move on, we are likely to realize the projected revenue, Honorable Speaker. For the first time, Honorable Speaker, looking at this budget, I would say that the projected revenue for this financial year appear to be more realistic as compared to the past years. And we are likely to actually generate the proposed 2.03 trillion. But Honorable Speaker, the issue of private consumption will still need to be addressed or to be monitored keenly, Honorable Speaker, because it is a fact in this country, what we call household income has seriously been eroded as a result of people losing their jobs, as a result of people losing their small businesses. So the demand side of the equation, Honorable Speaker, as a challenge. And at the same time, the other item we need to monitor seriously, Honorable Speaker, is the cost of energy. Honorable Speaker, this is a threat to the inflation rates in this country. And at the same time, unless the food prices continue remaining very low, inflation might also be a risk because of the energy cost. But Honorable Speaker, what that means is, as we look at this budget keenly, there is need to really look at the way we are investing the money, and more so the development budget. And I think time has come when now any investment which is going to be taken in this financial year must target high priority areas where the expected returns, Honorable Speaker, are also very high. So, Honorable Speaker, I just want to say a few things related to some of the things my chairman has said. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the pending bills, all the departments which came up before us as a committee did report very huge pending bills, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, what is critical is these pending bills, they need to be analyzed. For me, Honorable Speaker, I just want to single one of the departments, the Department of Infrastructure, Honorable Speaker, where we have pending bills relating to land compensation. Honorable Speaker, Kenyans out there have gone out of their way to give land to the government to do roads. But Honorable Speaker, this land has not been compensated for many years. And I think really this is very unfair to Kenyans who have given out land. And I think, Honorable Speaker, these are some of the areas where the government needs to go out of their way to make sure that this kind of pending bills are cleared, because it really affects our people down there. The other point, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of the Consolidated Fund Services, Honorable Speaker. Just as the chair said, this item has already now gone beyond the recurrent expenditure of this government. And Honorable Speaker, I think what we need to do is basically to make sure that as a house that oversights the executive, we start looking at the detailed explanatory notes to see what is in this fund, the Consolidated Fund Service, Mr. Speaker, because that will be very important for this House for purposes of accountability and transparency. And Mr. Speaker, what is happening when these figures keep on moving up, then we have very minimal budget flexibility. And as a House, and even as departments, and even Treasury, in budgeting, there are very small room to change things, because like it's just a straight jacket. That is, you pay debt, you pay salaries, and then you have a very small amount, Mr. Speaker, remaining for development. And I've said many times in this House, Honorable Speaker, unless we address the matter of development, Honorable Speaker, then the economy will not grow. The cake will remain the same and will not be able to share that bigger cake. And actually, Honorable Speaker, this is now why you see the issue of the fiscal deficit becomes very serious in this country. And I think really as a country, both the House and the Executive, we really need to monitor our expenditure patterns, Mr. Speaker. Because unless we really do something on the expenditure side of the budget, we are likely to continue having a lot of problems. Mr. Speaker, the other area I want to focus more is the issue of policy. Mr. Speaker, we all know in this country now, we are moving to what we call the competence-based curriculum, Honorable Speaker. And we know now next year more likely to be having the grade 4. And this grade 4, this curriculum demands a lot of evaluation, very regular evaluation. But when you look at the budget, Honorable Speaker, you realize this sector has been underfunded. The same with the TVETs, the Technical Training Institution, Mr. Speaker. So it brings a question on the matter of planning, budgeting, because you must tie policy, planning and budgeting, so that whatever the policy is actually supported by planning and then by budget. Otherwise, you'll have very hanging policies which don't help this country. For example, a lot of the TVETs which have been done, Honorable Speaker, are complete in terms of infrastructure, but they have not been equipped. So Kenyans are not really reaping the benefits of these TVETs because they are not equipped. The other matter, Honorable Speaker, which I think is critical, and we need to pick is, if you look at the budget of the Auditor General, Honorable Speaker, the budget of the Auditor General is actually not high. And Honorable Speaker, what we are forgetting as Kenyans is, in addition to the Auditor General auditing the national government, the Auditor General is auditing the county governments, the Auditor General is auditing all the special funds, and the Auditor General is auditing all the commissions. So, Mr. Speaker, because the Auditor General supports us do our work in terms of oversight, I think this office needs to be properly funded, Honorable Speaker, so that we are able to get real-time reports to do our work. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, which is critical, is the issue of the cash transfer. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we have decided that we are going to support the elderly, we are going to support the children, the orphans, and we are going to support quite a number of groups so that by these cash transfers. But Mr. Speaker, anytime you analyze the budget, the cash transfers are not coming in a timely manner. Actually, Mr. Speaker, there's a lot of delay. 4 months delay, some are given 2 months, then another 4 months remaining. And I think if it's a government policy to support these disadvantaged groups, Honorable Speaker, it would be important that this fund, the cash transfers, Mr. Speaker, is adequately funded, so that in that case, then Kenya is able to reap the benefits. Mr. Speaker, the other issue I want to address is the issue of the exchequer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members are already complaining that CDF money has not been released. And this has to do with exchequer releases, Mr. Speaker, that the country is not generating enough money in terms of revenue collection to support the budget. And I think, Honorable Speaker, this matter of exchequer releases has to be properly monitored, Mr. Speaker. Because unless we get it right on this, Mr. Speaker, then the budgeting exercise becomes just an exercise in futility, Honorable Speaker. Because the truth of the matter is you budget, but the money supposed to support that implementation of the budget is not released by Treasury. So we have that challenge, and that's why you see members are saying no CDF, no budget. And I think really, in addition to no CDF, no budget, there are other areas which also demand to be supported, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, as I'm saying is, really because I can see now I'm running short of time, Mr. Speaker, we really need as a House to monitor this budget-making process. Because even the supplementary budgets, Mr. Speaker, we are passing this House, are also interfering. You find you reduce a budget which has already been committed. So at the end of the day, you have a pending bill, Mr. Speaker. And these are the small things which need to be sorted out so that we clean our budget-making process. Honorable Speaker, the other issue is the tax administration, as I conclude. I think, Mr. Speaker, tax administration needs a serious review. And I want to urge the Finance Committee, Honorable Speaker, to take that matter and follow it keenly. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I second this motion. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, I will therefore propose order, members. What is this market business happening at the order? So then I propose a question, which is that this House adopts the report of the Budget and Appropriation Committee on the budget estimates for the national government, the judiciary, and Parliament for the financial year 2021-2022, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, June 8, 2021, and pursuant to provisions of Article 221 of the Constitution, Section 39 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, and Standing Order 239, approves the issuance of the sum of Kenya shillings 1,945,6,000 671,474,883 from the consolidated fund to meet the expenditure during the financial year ending June 30th, 2022, in respect of votes contained in the first schedule of the order paper, subject to paragraph C, which is Committee of Supply. B, makes the policy and financial resolutions contained in the second schedule to the order paper. And C, order that the Speaker do now leave the chair to facilitate the consideration of the said budget estimates with respect to each vote and program in the Committee of the Supply, as contemplated under Standing Order 240, which is consideration of estimates in the Committee of Supply. Now, the Leader Majority, you want to have the first shot on this? Say later. So then, I am, well, if I were to go through the list, of course, Mugambi Gishuki would be on top. But of course, the chairs also have some. So let's have the Honorable Mugambi Gishuki, and then I'll give some chairs, because they have to. They need to have some priority also, because they will be leading some of the specific votes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to support. And Honorable Speaker, this is the first time and that we continue to increasingly do our budget at a very tight and delicate fiscal infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, as the share has moved, we have a lot of challenges in this budget, and one of them is the pending bills. Mr. Speaker, this issue of pending bills, we discussed it last year, and whereas we appreciate the effort the national government through the Treasury has done to try and address this monster of the pending bills, Mr. Speaker, it's not the same case with the county governments, and I think our Senate counterparts should take up this matter and ensure that the county governments also reduce the pending bills. Mr. Speaker, pending bills are really a big challenge to business community. We have seen many businesses collapsing. We've seen many businesses being auctioned, and more so even our banking
Just a minute, Honorable Member for Odaya. Just to inform the chairs that we will be going as per the way the committees are listed in the second schedule. The chairs will be having 15 minutes. Of course, the reason why we gave Honorable Gishuki is for the chairs to be able to reorganize themselves. And of course, once in a while, the members will have a shot. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, these pending bills is affecting the operations of our banking system. Honorable Speaker, we've seen banks making extremely huge provisions in their loan book because people are not able to pay, and most of these people are people who are owed money by government through the pending bills. Mr. Speaker, we also have to speak to another monster in this issue of pending bills, that we have government ministries owed money by other government ministries, and it's a big challenge, Honorable Speaker. A good example is a case of KPLC, for instance, that they are already under big pressure on operations, and they are owed money by other government ministries. Mr. Speaker, we are requesting the National Treasury to coordinate all the departments and ensure that intra-pending bills within government are sorted out, and this will ensure that the government parastatals, which are the big financial challenge, can at least survive. Honorable Speaker, the other monster is the monster of stalled projects. A lot of these stalled projects are holding huge amounts of investment. Honorable Speaker, when you consider that this money has been borrowed and then put or sunk into stalled projects. We are paying interest. These projects are not producing or helping in increasing productive capacity within the economy. Then you wonder why we should be starting other projects. We have a stock of almost $1 trillion, Honorable Speaker, installed projects. And these are all financed through borrowed funds. And this House should take a lead, particularly on our office block here, which continue to hold a lot of money. We continue, some of us, suffering without offices, and yet we are planning for new projects without finishing a project which is already over 80% finished, Honorable Speaker. We also, Honorable Speaker, when you look at the tax measures being undertaken to finance this bill, Honorable Speaker, you will see that we are going to have a challenge. We are going to have a challenge because we're in a time when the government should be giving incentives to the economy. But now we are coming up with some very difficult tax measures, Honorable Speaker. We should be careful not to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Because when you overtax businesses, for instance, when we talk about tax measures like turnover tax, Honorable Speaker, for those who understand tax, is tax on sales. But we know that the principle of taxation is that tax should be levied on profits, not on activity. Honorable Speaker, there are many businesses, even government operations like KPLC, for instance, they are the losses. When you tell them to make tax on sales, you're already killing them. Honorable Speaker, we have very low margin businesses in this economy. They have high turnover but low margin. If you tell them to pay you money in advance, they will kill them. So in the long term, we are going to kill the goose that lays the golden egg. Honorable Speaker, I know we have to definitely finance our budget operations, but we must be careful not to affect our long-term survival by killing entrepreneurship, by killing businesses which are employing hundreds and thousands of Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, when you take businesses like oil businesses downstream, their margins are very low, but turnover is high. Businesses like steel manufacturing, their turnovers are very high, but margins are very low. If you tax them on turnover, you are going to kill them. And we should stick to the principles of good taxation system. A good taxation system will always ensure that you tax those who should be taxed. It will always ensure that it is easy to administer tax. Today, Honorable Speaker, we are introducing some tax systems where you have even to go and perhaps employ a tax collector in a farmer's shed to monitor a hen when it's laying the egg, to make sure that you tax that egg. But that is not the principle of a good tax system. The principle of a good tax system should give the farmer time to feed his chicken, to collect his eggs, to take them to the market, to come back and calculate profit, and then pay tax on what is remaining. That is a good tax system. But the one where you monitor whether a chicken is about to lay egg, and then you ask the farmer whether it's you to take the egg or the farmer, that's a bad tax system. Honorable Speaker, we also have to support our small-scale businesses. We must ensure that the money we are borrowing from the banking sector is not crowding out the private sector. Honorable Speaker, we have started seeing signs of interest rates coming up because the government is borrowing a lot locally. We would request the Treasury to continue making effort to externalize part of the debt and also to manage expenditure, Honorable Speaker. As we speak, when you look at the amount of money we're paying on external loans plus interest, and what we are paying as salaries and recurrent expenditure, Honorable Speaker, it shows that we are between a rock and a hard stone, Honorable Speaker. And the only way to manage this situation is for the Treasury to come up with measures to rein on unnecessary expenditure, and also to ensure that most of the commercial loans, which are short-term with high interest rates, are actually renegotiated, externalized where we can, and also we go the multilateral, the multilateral way, where we can get loans on concession basis. I beg to support, Honorable Speaker.
Okay, so we will go by the second schedule of the standing order in terms of citing committees. And let me confirm that I do not see the first three in the House, and that's Administration, Agriculture, and Communication. That be the case, I give the fourth committee, which is Defense and Foreign Relations, represented by the Vice Chair. Just walked out, unfortunately. So we have Education and Research. Are you ready? Yes, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to take this opportunity, first and foremost, to thank the members of the two committees, Education and Research and Budget and Appropriations Committee, for their dedication in this process. Mr. Speaker, the 2021-2022 proposed budget for the education sector, which has got 6 spending agencies, is currently standing at 503 billion, and it is the second, this sector ranks among the highest in terms of resource allocation in the budget, Mr. Speaker, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the government for according us the support, even if the resources are not enough. Mr. Speaker, the various areas of spending which have been given priority in the budget include resources to support free primary and secondary education, school infrastructure improvement, funding of the university education and management of teacher resources, as well as expansion of the TVET, the various TVET institutions in the country. Mr. Speaker, as part of our oversight role in the budget, allow me to point out some key issues which the committee observed during the proposed budget for education sector and which the committee tried to address in its review of the budget estimates. One, Mr. Speaker, my committee noted that the school feeding program aimed at retaining learners in primary schools is disadvantaged in areas not being administered in an effective manner. Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons is the inadequacies in the criteria used to identify which areas to benefit. And Mr. Speaker, we have quickly requested the ministry to review the policy to ensure that areas are mapped again, so that we can even have the slum areas reached with this program. Further, we have also supported NACONEC, which is going to expand this program in terms of bringing development partners on board to ensure this program reaches many, many students who need a school feeding program. Mr. Speaker, the committee also noted that the ministry has been capturing learners' details called MIS, Information Management System, where we capture the data for the learners. Mr. Speaker, this is going to ensure that any capitation that goes to schools rules out any ghost students, so that we have the money that is going for capitation reach the right beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, on the expansion of TVET infrastructure, the committee also observed that the first phase of the 30 TTIs is well on course. However, the money has been released, the money that is being released is not enough, and we kindly requested the Treasury to ensure that these TVETs are completed, so that the areas that have the TTIs benefit from them. The committee also, Mr. Speaker, noted that most of the infrastructure projects in public universities are not well funded, and they have really taken long to be completed. And we kindly requested Treasury through the Budget Committee to ensure that these TTIs are fully supported to be completed, and for them to be completed for use. On university education, Mr. Speaker, the committee observed that most of the public universities are not well funded and are struggling to stay operational, a problem compounded by the criteria used to allocate resources to them. Mr. Speaker, a thorough review of the funding criteria for universities quickly needs to be done, which the committee is undertaking currently, so that they get adequate funding. And we have also requested for the support of the University Funding Board, which is a body legally mandated to review how the public universities are funded. We have requested for support in the current budget. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we need to have a serious conversation on whether we require the many public universities in view of the constrained resources. Mr. Speaker, this is a discourse which needs to be opened up for members to discuss. Mr. Speaker, with the current rollout of the CBC, there is need to ensure that the many examination assessments which will be required, they will be in a safe custody, and that is why the committee is supporting the completion of the Mitihani House, as the budget chair has said, because this Mitihani House has stalled for the last 35 years. And my committee is very committed to have this house completed, because in the new CBC, we are going to have many, many assessments that will be done, and we need to have them done locally, because currently we are having the exams printed outside and it's very expensive. It would be prudent to complete this construction, Mr. Speaker, so that the security of examinations and exam materials are guaranteed as the country implements the new CBC. Mr. Speaker, still on the issue of the implementation of the new curriculum, the committee noted that the newly established State Department for implementation of curriculum reforms has unfortunately not been supported in the current budget. This is going to throw the education sector in disarray, Mr. Speaker, despite the House having approved the appointment of the Principal Secretary. Mr. Speaker, this may delay the operationalization of this very important department, hence derailing the smooth implementation of the new curriculum. The National Treasury should ensure that this department is provided with resources so that the rollout of the curriculum reforms is done properly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, lastly, I'd like to comment on the issue of recruitment of teachers, which is dear to members of this House, Mr. Speaker. Given the government's 100% transition and the issue of the new curriculum reforms, we will need a higher number of teachers hired so that we can ensure that the 100% transition takes place properly. We also need infrastructure because of the same 100% transition, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the TSC has been allocated 2.5B to hire only 5,000 teachers for secondary schools, which is hardly enough given the prevailing teaching resources, Mr. Speaker. We, as a committee, Mr. Speaker, we requested the Treasury through the Budget Committee to give us an additional 5,000 teachers so that this time we hire 10,000 teachers so that we can have enough, at least a good number of teachers being hired in the constituencies. Mr. Speaker, not related to the budget but related to the issue of the TSC policy, honorable members should know that we are relooking at the Act to ensure that when the teachers are being hired, we have 70-30%. 70 being the local people being hired, and 30% maybe from external. So members, kindly just know that we are looking at that policy to ensure we hire teachers locally first, the 70%, and 30% externally, so that we ensure our people also get to be hired first, the people we represent. Mr. Speaker, my committee, having reviewed the budget for education sector, made policy and financial recommendations, which I believe the ministry will pick to ensure the intended outcomes of education sector are fully achieved. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Chair for Education. Job well done. We appreciate that. The next chair is next committee, as per our standing orders, is Energy. Chair Energy is not in the House at the moment. The next is Environment and Natural Resources, not in the House. Finance and Planning. Finance and National Planning, the Honorable Wanga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this report by the Budget and Appropriations Committee and thank the Budget and Appropriations Committee for putting in a lot of work in coming up with this report within the short time that was available. But I'd also like to thank the Committee on Finance and National Planning for the work they put in scrutinizing the budget, the budgets for the departments and commissions that fall under our committee. Honorable Speaker, we do this budget under the reality of significant resource constraints. Honorable Speaker, the whole world is reeling under the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, an underperforming economy. And Honorable Speaker, this is a reality that has hit Kenyans also, with job losses, with inability of Kenyans who are able to feed their families usually, now unable to fend for their families. Honorable Speaker, in the last financial year, we had a raft of COVID relief measures, which provided relief and cushion for many families. We had reductions in pay-as-you-earn, we had reduction in VAT, we had reduction in corporate taxes, so that we were able to help our corporates to save jobs for our people. And while this served to cushion Kenyans, it resulted in a drastic drop in our revenue. And therefore, we are between a rock and a hard place. We are cushioning Kenyans on the one hand, but on the other hand, we have to raise sufficient revenue to be able to provide services for the very Kenyans. Honorable Speaker, the situation that we find ourselves in calls for creativity in tax administration, creativity in terms of not just taxing the same old culprits, but in trying to widen our tax base, finding new people and bringing them into the tax base. Honorable Speaker, investing in KRA, investing sufficiently in KRA. And Honorable Speaker, we have a report as the Finance Committee on the floor of this House that speaks to some of the areas we feel there needs to be investment in KRA so that we're able to raise more money. Honorable Speaker, while discussing with KRA, we learned that for every 1 shilling we invest in KRA, you can actually raise 100 shillings. Therefore, if we put in an extra 1 billion, we are likely to raise 100 billion from that extra 1 billion. We cannot expect to raise money if we are not investing enough in KRA and in some of the facilities that we require. And we want to actually thank even the Treasury for ensuring that now we are going to be able to have scanners along our borders. When the Committee on Finance visited our borders in Malaba and Busia, we discovered that the Ugandan side, whose total tax revenue is 600 billion, the entire Uganda raises 600 billion, something that only our customs alone raises, but they have invested in scanners, electronic scanners on the Ugandan side of the border. But if you come to the Kenyan side of the border, there are no scanners. And therefore, Kenyan officers wait for you images from the Ugandan side to check whether the truck you're checking is actually covering ethanol with watermelons and so on. And so these are some of the investments that we must make. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of debt, as was already raised by the Chairman of Budget and Appropriations, we currently have a debt of 7.3 trillion, but then there is an additional 1.35 trillion of debt that has been signed but has not been drawn or disbursed, bringing the total debt to 8.65 trillion against a ceiling of 9 trillion. Therefore, if you look at our deficit, fiscal deficit in this financial year of almost 900 billion, then you see that we must adjust our debt ceiling to be able to accommodate what we'll be doing in this coming financial year. Honorable Speaker, what alternatives do we have on the matter of debt? And we want to thank Treasury for having an aggressive push towards having public-private partnerships. And before the floor of this House is now the PPP bill that will ensure...
The Honorable Wanga.
Yes?
Just hold on a moment there. The member for Aldai seems to be agitated about something. What is out of order, the Honorable member for Aldai, the Honorable Therem?
Mr. Speaker, we are discussing a matter of national importance as we are in this House. Is it in order that we are discussing the same when we don't have the quorum, Mr. Speaker? We don't have enough quorum, Mr. Speaker, to discuss this matter of this weighty on the floor of the House. There is no quorum, Chair.
Honorable members, the member having stood in his place and raised that point of order, we know the meaning of it. So I will direct that we certify the numbers that we have so that we can proceed with this, or to confirm within the next 2 minutes. Otherwise, we will have to ring the quorum bell to confirm to me. The sergeant attempts to confirm through the clerk to me whether we have the requisite quorum. The Honorable Serem, wherever you are, you cannot leave. Yes, you have to stay here until this process is done. Yes. Honorable members, you know that when this point is raised, you cannot leave the chambers when the certification is going on. The Honorable Ngeno just...
You will give me the chance after if we succeed to get the vote after the finance.
Honorable members, I'm just waiting for the confirmation of the members who are in the holding chambers. Ring the bell. The Honorable. The Honorable Member for Emurwa Dikir. The Honorable Member for the Honorable Christopher Malwa, just hold your horses. The Speaker is in charge. Relax. You cannot direct the Speaker from where you are seated. Honorable members, it has been confirmed to me by the Sergeant at Arms that we have the requisite numbers to proceed with this business. There are enough members in the holding chambers. We shall proceed. The Honorable Wanga, proceed. Yes. The Honorable Wanga, apparently your mic has completely gone off. We can't find you. Can you move? Can you move kindly? Come to the table here. Give her the mic. Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Serem is my neighbor Uko in the village, but he's now behaving like a first-time member of parliament. I mean, the raising quorum was used to, if you've never spoken in Bunge, the only thing you stand and do is raise quorum. So Honorable Serem, as a good neighbor of mine, who was also known to my father, should behave like the adult that he is. He's a very good legislator. I don't know why he's behaving like a newcomer. And he's like an amateur, because all the matters are here. We will debate them here, we will discuss them here, we will agree on them here, when we are seated on the floor of this house, not when we are out. Honorable Speaker, coming to the issue of alternatives to debt, I thank Treasury for the aggressive push towards public-private partnerships so that some of these capital projects can be funded through PPPs rather than from the exchequer. And the bill on PPPs is on the floor of this House, and we hope that members can support it so that we can go the PPP direction on some of the major investments. Honorable Speaker, there's also the whole issue of privatization and divestiture. We have not had any listings at the Nairobi Stock Exchange for a very long time, Honorable Speaker, for over 10 years, almost 7-8 years, Honorable Speaker, actually more than 10 years. So, Honorable Speaker, I'd like to urge Treasury to move with speed, because we have a privatization commission that is not complete. The privatization commission has a chairman, but does not have a complete board. So Treasury should move with speed to appoint commissioners to the privatization commission so that the privatization commission can continue to look at the list for privatization so that we can make a decision on how else we can actually raise money away from just borrowing. Honorable Speaker, coming to the issue on planning, we must continue to fund and support the State Department of Planning so that we can plan, because failing to plan, Honorable Speaker, is planning to fail, as was said by Benjamin Franklin many years ago. Honorable Speaker, institutions such as KIPRA, that were excellent premier institutions of research are currently crumbling and under underfunding. Honorable Speaker, this we should move and do. Honorable Speaker, in terms of CDF, there's an allocation under planning of 41.7 billion, and the committee has made recommendations, Honorable Speaker, for an increase that we will be discussing also when we come to the Committee of Supply. Honorable Speaker, because when funds are not moving, our people rely mostly, Honorable Speaker, on what they can reach easiest, which is the CDF. Every corner of this country you go to, you will see that CDF is doing what it was meant to do from the word go, together with NGAF, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of, from the State Department of Devolution, Honorable Speaker, I'd like to urge, Honorable Speaker, for this House to consider funding for emergencies. Honorable Speaker, since independence, for the first time, there is no funding for emergencies. In case there are floods, in case there is drought, every member of parliament will have to go into their own pockets to look for money. The rice, the maize, the feeding programs that we have had in counties such as Turkana, there are areas where continuously on a monthly basis they receive aid because of the continuous drought. That has not been budgeted for, and we hope, and we have proposed as a committee that we can look at some of these areas. Honorable Speaker, a commission such as the Commission on Revenue Allocation requires support so that we can deal especially with the issue of on-source revenue. If you look at our counties, the on-source revenue that they were raising when they were still county councils has now dropped by almost 90%. So you wonder, in terms of reporting, so you wonder whether counties are no longer raising these monies, or they are being raised and going into people's pockets like pocket change without being reported and remitted into the consolidated fund account. Honorable Speaker, these are some of the areas that we have strong proposals to make additions to as a finance committee. We will be discussing. I know Honorable Chris Wamalwa was saying, can we, as finance committee, speak to revenue raising measures? But next week, the finance committee will be tabling our report on the finance bill. And at that point, we will be able to discuss adequately our revenue raising measures and the proposals that have been made by the National Treasury, and what we have listened to as far as public participation is concerned, and what we are proposing moving forward. And at that point, we will be able to discuss into detail our revenue raising measures. For now, Honorable Speaker, those are some of our comments on the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the budget estimates for 2021-2022. Honorable Speaker, I beg to support.
Well done, Chair of Finance. The next Chair is the Chair for Health. Honorable Minority.
House is governed by rules and order. Is the member for Alda in order to keep on crisscrossing from one chair to another despite the issues of COVID, in the pretext that, Honorable Speaker, he wants to mobilize members to go out, yet all of us are with him in terms of seeking for funds from CDF. Yet, Honorable Speaker, by virtue of his actions, I'm worried my members might end up getting COVID, Honorable Speaker. Is the member right to keep on hopping around from one place to another? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yeah. Yes, honorable members, the member for Aldai, you know this is a house of consultations. And we consult from time to time. Even what he's trying to do is also within our standing orders. If he feels that he needs to raise a point of order on quorum, he can do so, and we will be able to deal with it. But as he does that, I would advise him to adhere to the COVID protocols so that he protects himself and also protects the members. But consultations for members, we will continue, but within the COVID requirements. Yes, having said that, the chair for health, the honorable member for SACU, what is out of order?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the chairs had the priority during this session this morning. But also, we members have come early to contribute to the same. So I wish to seek your indulgence that we can have 2 chairs and 1 member speaking, so that we are not sitting here in vain. In that case, then we should actually follow the advice of Aldai members so that we walk out also. Thank you, Speaker.
The honorable member for SACU, I saw you very early. We were here with you when we started. But we are the members who set up these standing orders. And if you had a look at standing order 216, it gives priority to the chairs, actually. And there are not too many. I just have about 3 or 4 to go. Then I will come to the members. So these are standing orders. My hands are bound, and we should be able to finish up with them. Yeah, just hold on. You will have your say. And you always have your say, member for SACU. So the chair for health is not there. The next is justice and legal affairs. Justice and legal affairs, I cannot see. Labor and social welfare. Labor, yes. Yeah, then we'll have land, followed by sports, followed by trade, and then transport and housing, and that will be it. Then we'll have defense, in that order. Labor and social welfare.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this report by the Budget and Appropriations Committee. On the onset, I want to thank them for working very hard under difficult conditions that we are in the country to produce this report, Honorable Speaker. As I do so, I encourage them to continue fighting for the integrity of our budgets and budget-making processes, Mr. Speaker, and more so ensuring that what we budget for is what we can be able to meet in terms of supply, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that we have noted is that despite the budgets that we do pass in this House, Mr. Speaker, quite often than not, disbursements of funds from Treasury drays services out there, Mr. Speaker. And in the Department of Labor and Social Welfare, Mr. Speaker, we have a number of our departments that are suffering that cannot provide services because of delayed disbursements, especially for 3rd and 4th quarter. We have in particular the child welfare that has not received funds for the 3rd and 4th quarter, and thereby putting vulnerable children that have been sponsored by this particular department at risk of being thrown out of the schools that they are in, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I do request that the Budget and Appropriations Committee continue following it up with the CS to ensure that release of funds, especially for critical areas, is given priority, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the budget that we have in front of us, while it's under serious challenges of our economy, we do encourage again the Budget and Appropriations Committee to prioritize areas that are social in nature and those that also are able to generate income to not only sustain themselves but also generate money of funds to our country. The Inua Jamii program, Honorable Speaker, falls under our department, our committee. And as members know, this is an important area where the elderly, over 70 men and women, are supposed to receive money to help them to live a decent life, Honorable Speaker. In this current budget, we have a deficit of 4.7 billion, putting 128,000 elderly men and women out of the scheme, Honorable Speaker, defranchising them from their peers who are receiving this money. And it's painful, Honorable Speaker, when you have your neighbors receiving this money and you are not receiving it, Honorable Speaker. And this is an area that I really urge the Budget and Appropriations Committee to re-look again and see what can be done to cover this deficit of 4.7 billion. And Honorable Speaker, this 4.7 billion is for the registered elderly men and women currently. There are many others out there who are yet to be entered into the program through registration. And if we have to sustain this program, then I think we need to finance it continually and ensure that we are not causing grief to some of our members of the society out there, Mr. Speaker. This committee oversees the Department of Labor and Social Welfare, Honorable Speaker, which is also looking at very important areas, including the youth, the women, children, elderly, and people living with disabilities, Honorable Speaker. And it's unfortunate that these areas continue to be underfunded. While these are areas that are supposed to look at members of our society who are vulnerable, we continue to have them underfunded. The Youth Empowerment Program or Fund, for example, Honorable Speaker, was allocated only 60 million to support the youth-owned enterprises. 60 million for all our youth in this country, constituting 60% of the society. This is money that cannot be felt in any way. Honorable Speaker, another area that is underfunded and is unfortunate once again is the National Employment Authority. This is an area, or this authority has the potential to secure job opportunities for our youth who are underemployed in this country. In the countries of Middle East, Europe, Australia, Canada, and others, they have the potential to increase revenue remittance in this country by a large margin. And just to give a comparison, Honorable Speaker, in the year 2020, countries like China were able to have remittances of 59 billion, Mexico 42 billion, Philippines 32 billion, Egypt 29 billion, China 83 billion. Kenya, with all its potential, was only able to have a remittance of 3.1 billion. We have been, within the short time I've interacted with members of this committee, been discussing why we are not able to attract more riba exports. And some of the things that we have discovered, Honorable Speaker, are that our country has not been able to place riba attaches in some of these countries, Honorable Speaker, with only labor attaches in only four countries, including Swaziland, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. And with our opinion that we need to increase revenue funding to this ministry so that more labor attaches in liaison with the foreign ministry can be attached to these countries to attract more revenue. Those of us who are following up on what is happening in places like Dubai, Honorable Speaker, the country there, with all its population, it's only 13% local. The rest of the people who are in Dubai, 87% are foreigners. And these foreigners are earning a lot of revenue for their countries. In our situation, because of underfunding of institutions like the National Employment Authority, that would not only help our youth to secure these jobs, but to also ensure that they are treated decently wherever they are, we find that our Kenyans out there, some of them are suffering. Suffering because some of them went to these countries without the help of the government, through agents whose sole purpose is to earn from these employees, young men and women. They are under torture out there. We do not have labor attaches who would be following up on what they are doing out there. So when you go to some of these countries, Honorable Speaker, you find that while other nationals are enjoying their employment, some of them securing very decent employments in those countries, our people are not looked at. They are not looked after. And it's for this reason, once again, I am urging the Budget and Appropriations Committee to look at some of these areas that would actually directly generate revenue for our country, Honorable Speaker. Another area is the National Youth Service, which is operating under a new act. The old National Youth Service that we knew is probably changing to an institution that has the potential, once again, to generate revenue, to not only sustain itself, but also generate revenue for this country. Anyone who visits the National Youth Service would be impressed by equipment that is there. Construction equipment, for example, that is sitting idle in that institution, only awaiting funding for their newly created enterprise that would help them to now turn itself into a business institution. Those of us who are also who are following what is happening in China and are aware that the companies that are constructing roads and other buildings in this country are actually directly owned by the government in China. We have no reason not to utilize the resources that are possessed by NYS to help us in the building of infrastructure in this country. They have come up with an enterprise. They've been looking for funding for the last 5 years, and all they are requiring is about 2 billion to kick off that particular enterprise, and we start holding them accountable to ensure that now they no longer rely on the government funding and start generating cash or other funds for themselves, Honorable Speaker. So this is important, that even as we may do our budget, even as we deal with the challenges that these countries is going through, just like any other country, that we continue to be innovative, that we continue to give priority to areas that are social, because we must look at our people, areas that generate revenue to ensure that we support our budget and not to rely on foreign support all along, Honorable Speaker. The other area I want to touch on is the area that is covered very well in the Budget and Appropriations report, and that is the area of outstanding bills and stored projects, Honorable Speaker. Outstanding bills have been a thorn in the flesh for many of the Kenyans who genuinely did jobs in this country. Kenyans who today are living very poor life, yet they did supply or provide services to this country. And because some of these outstanding bills have been subjected to vetting, it's a high time that Treasury and the committee come up with a lasting solution to end this issue once and for all. Honorable Speaker, I led in the report that there is a recommendation by the committee that Treasury should come up with a long-term bond to be able to address these pending bills once and for all, so that year by year we do not have this item in our budget, Honorable Speaker. The National Youth Service, again, which has its own history, a history that should not punish some of the people who supplied goods and services in their genuine form, is owing suppliers and service providers the tune of about 15 billion. When we went through that list, Honorable Speaker, we realized with about 2 billion, we can pay the small-scale debtors who are suffering out there, small-scale people who are owned less than a million or two, and this would really help those people, some of whom are no longer existing. People may not know that due to these pending bills, some people have actually taken their lives or have ended up in dying because they cannot sustain themselves. And therefore, this is an issue that should be taken seriously. We thank the President for the directive that he gave, that all pending bills should be cleared, and it's upon Treasury now to innovatively come up with ideas on how to clear this item out of our budget. Stored projects, Honorable Speaker. I do not know whether we have a stock of all the stored projects in all sectors in this country. These stored projects are denying Kenyans essential services, some of which would really improve the lives of Kenyans. And therefore, again, we urge Treasury to also focus on this, put emphasis on the same, ensure that every sector addresses the stored projects in their sectors so that Kenyans can start enjoying the services of those projects as they were meant to be. Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to support this report.
Chair Lantz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I support this report, and I would like to thank Departmental Committee on Budget and Appropriations, the chairman, and the members for the work that they put into this budget estimates work within the shortest time that was available. I would also like to take this opportunity before I start, Honorable Speaker, to thank the Departmental Committee on Lands for the work that they put in. They interacted with the estimates for the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning and also the National Land Commission, and they gave great recommendations that I'll be going through. Mr. Speaker, as the House is aware, we deal with the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning and the National Land Commission. And with regard to the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning, the focus is on titling, production of title deeds for land that has been registered, and digitalization, which is a huge program for government, where the President would like to have all the land, possibly all the land in this country, digitized to ensure that when the investors want to invest, they're able to identify where this land is and even be able to get an indication of its value based on the laws that have been passed in this House, and just making reference to the land value index that was done. Mr. Speaker, with regard to the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning, most of our money has been put in production of title deeds, as I just said, and also digitalization. One thing that the committee noted, for the purpose of relevance, I'll just go to the issues of lands, that we noted, just as the chair budget said, that the National Treasury had not implemented the House resolution contained in the budget policy statement, that ours was slightly higher, and it has been clearly explained by the budget chairman. The State Department of Physical Planning, Mr. Speaker, continues to operate on a very low budget of 60 million, Well, when we started being in this committee, that is in the year 2017-18, the budget was more or less the same. Now, this House passed Principal Secretary for the Department of Physical Planning. And the PS has clearly presented to the committee, which has also been passed to this House, that there is a requirement of 1.9 billion for the ministry to be able to support physical planning within the counties, Mr. Speaker, to support physical planning within our counties. And we are aware that physical planning is very important. What has gone there is only 60 million. I would like to thank the Departmental Committee on Budget because they listened to the recommendations of the committee, and this budget has been pushed up to 200 million, but still it is still very low. Since we passed a principal secretary for this department, it is important for the department to be funded. So the State Department of Physical Planning needs to be allocated a budget vote to facilitate the implementation of the proposed National Sectional Spatial Program, that is NSSP, and the County Spatial Support Program. The Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning needs to cease cash collection. Mr. Speaker, you notice that the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning is a very important ministry for all the other ministries because it provides land, which is required for development. When we look at collection of revenue this financial year, by the month of March 2021, the ministry had collected 7.3 billion against a target of 13 billion. I'm just saying this to sensitize the House to the importance of financing the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning because it is a ministry that can finance itself and maybe finance other departments within the country. What the committee has recommended is that the ministry must cease collection of cash. We have said this before, and we have said that we are giving a close of the last day of June 2021 so that they do not have any excuse for collecting money in cash. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of settlement of landless project in this country is an important aspect of the government. The President has really been very clear on settlement of people who are landless. And the committee has recommended uniformity, ensuring that it doesn't happen only in one region of the country, that it happens in all regions. And we have seen the ministry making an effort towards that. But the committee noticed that only 49 million has been given to resettlement of the landless in the year 2021-2022 against the number of persons, 39,000. So you see 49 million against 39,000 persons to be resettled. That clearly shows that planning has not been done very well. I thank the committee again because the committee, Departmental Committee on Lands made a recommendation of additional funding, and we got 250 million more to this, at least making it about 300 million. And we are really grateful as a departmental committee that the budget committee is able to take into consideration issues that are raised within the departmental committees. Honorable Speaker, the Ministry of Lands Physical Planning has an interesting pending bill of 7,245,228,954 shillings. Mr. Speaker, what we noticed as interesting is that this had not been declared earlier when you look at the reports that we are bringing. But it was explained to us that they are put together all the pending bills from different governments. I think the last 3 governments that have been in place in this country, Mr. Speaker. And most of these bills, we realized, are awards made in court cases in which the ministry had been sued due to commission or omission or falsification of documents by our own officers. Honorable Speaker, the departmental committee is very keen on this matter because we realize that our own lawyers are losing so many cases and also falsification of documents. They would like, the departmental committee on lands would like the people who are responsible for falsification of these documents to also be held liable, because you're talking of 7.2 billion in pending bills. When you look at them, it matters court. So, Mr. Speaker, these pending bills were not reflected in the previous financial years, despite the cases dating back to the year 2005. And, Mr. Speaker, the committee casted doubt on the authenticity of these pending bills. And with regard to oversight, we said that we would like the ministry to ensure that they go through these pending bills so that as they are being paid, we are sure. Honorable Speaker, as we go to the National Land Commission, National Land Commission has been funded very lowly based on what they present to the committee and also to this House. And we realize that most of the funding for the National Land Commission does not cater for development, which is very interesting. You realize that they're able to pay salaries, and that is it. And they have several projects that they have indicated that they would like to have funded. The National Land Commission has not been allocated funds for development expenditure, despite the several presentations that have been made for development expenditure to the National Treasury, including a proposal on vesting of compulsorily land that has been acquired. We put so much effort, and I remember the chair, the person who seconded this motion, the Honorable Makali, was talking about so many pieces of land that has been acquired compulsorily by government. The National Land Commission is supposed to ensure that vesting of this land is done, but continually we have not been able to provide. The budget that they have been requesting for is 600 million. Honorable Speaker, it is important to note that the National Land Commission, I think the commissioners are using vehicles that were bought in 2013, a matter of concern, and they are expected to work in at the counties. So they are not able to move to these counties. Mr. Speaker, I would like to, as I talk about budget, thank the ministry for what the ministry has been able to do. Thousands and thousands, actually millions of title deeds have been produced between the year 2017 and 2021. And I would like to say that we see this as a great achievement by the ministry, and we'd like them to continue doing the same. And you realize that the Departmental Committee on Lands also reduced slightly the budget for titling, and with concurrence with the ministry, and also explained clearly to the Budget Committee why this was done, so that we can push money towards digitalization of titles, which, as I said earlier, is a big project that we would like to see it being funded. Honorable Speaker, with regard to recommendations, one of the policy recommendations is that the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning should stop usage of cash. And I want to state here that it is not June, that it is by the 30th day of May 2021. So then it should have stopped. The National Treasury should allocate a vote to the State Department of Physical Planning, as I had clearly explained and stated the projects that it will go to. The government, through the cabinet, should review the current policy of centralizing the implementation of ICT. Majorly, the National Land Commission has a challenge with the purchasing of ICT, dealing with ICT projects, because this is being done at the Ministry of ICT, and they are saying that this causes challenges, and this year they recorded 0 in terms of implementation. They were not able to do anything. Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning should expedite the full implementation of digitization of land registries. Mr. Speaker, you notice that digitalization of land is up there. But most important is to ensure that the county offices are working. And the county offices have the infrastructure that is needed. That is purchasing of computers. So that now the ministry has been able to digitize Nairobi and its environs. And they are planning to go to the counties. So the recommendation of the Departmental Committee on Lands was that we need to see more construction of proper offices within the counties. And this is where they have requested construction of 3 offices, including 1 in Wajir. The northern region does not have a proper office, and this is one of the recommendations, Honorable Speaker. So with regard to financial recommendations, the committee recommends that the House approves the following. That is 1.437, 200,000 vote to the National Land Commission. And Honorable Speaker, I have said that this is very low. The National Land Commission has never received funding for development, and this is a concern, because this is where they'll be able to deal with issues at the counties. And also vote 112, the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning, comprising of recurrent of 3,044,600,000 and development expenditure of 2,411,700,000. Honorable Speaker, I would like to just state the financial recommendations that were made by the departmental committee. The departmental committee recommends that 450 million to be reduced from the processing and titling and registration of title deeds in the land policy and planning program in the Ministry of Lands, and increases 250 million to go to settlement, as I had clearly explained. This 250 million, Honorable Speaker, is going to purchase of land for a group called Taita Taveta Teachers. And the land is in Kisauni, and it takes more than half of Kisauni constituency. And it is a matter that was passed by this House. So we really appreciate that this has finally been done. 100 million to be increased in the physical planning project, that is to make the the Department of Physical Planning to work. As I had said, it has been given a very low amount, and clearly I've also explained that it requires about 1.9 billion. So this is just to kickstart the work of the Department of Physical Planning, which has been newly created. And then 50 million to go to construction of land registries in order to be able to boost the digitalization program. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to other recommendations that the committee made, that the National Treasury should avail additional funding in the future, about 700 million, or to go to Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning for digitalization process, so that we can see as many of our land in our counties being digitized. Those who have tried to experience the Nairobi one can see the advantage that we are talking about, such that a person can be able to search, to get a search within less than 3 minutes. 300 million also to settlement, Honorable Speaker. Open. Sorry, just give me a minute, Mr. Speaker. 65 million, Honorable Speaker, for construction of land registries, I'd explained. 600 million also to National Land Commission for vesting. 74 million to National Land Commission for purchase of vehicles so that they are able to move. And 65 million to facilitate recruitment of technical staff. Honorable Speaker, with those remarks, I would like to support and thank you very much.
The next is Chair for Sports. The next one is Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. Not there. Transport, Public Works and Housing. Not there. We shall have Chair for Defense, and that's the last of the chairs. We shall go to the...
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity also to make our remarks on behalf of the Committee of Defense and Foreign Affairs. Honorable Speaker, we want to acknowledge from the onset the support, the tireless work done by the Committee of Budget and Appropriation Committee, running through all the 12 counties. Honorable Speaker, took a lot of hard work, and we appreciate the input they got from those counties. Honorable Speaker, this is the 4th annual budget to be prepared in the 2nd term of the Jubilee administration under the economic transformation agenda, which now puts emphasis on Big Four agenda, and we are hoping that this budget will be able to help us achieve it as a country, because the success of those Big Four agenda will help the country to raise the kind of money that we are looking for, to create employment opportunities for the unemployed youths, to also spur the economy, Honorable Speaker, so that we have a bigger cake to share from, as opposed to what we have at the moment, where all of us are struggling to get a pie of what is already exhausted, Honorable Speaker, because you can only give what you have, and when you don't have, Honorable Speaker, your wisdom demands that you get a way of increasing that which you have so that you can have something to give out. Honorable Speaker, our security forces, particularly the Kenya Defense Forces, has managed to keep the Al-Shabaab threats at bay. The attacks on our soil have reduced tremendously in the second term of the Jubilee administration compared to what we experienced in the first term. We are alive to the threats the militants still pose to our people and our nation at large. Our forces remain alive to these threats and are determined to ensure that they have neutralized the militants completely. And this is good for the country. We all owe it to the nation, and our forces have done their bit, because there's been a tremendous improvement compared to previous years, what the Army has been able to achieve, of course, together with the rest of the agencies who are teaming up together to ensure that the Kenya we live in is a safe country for everybody to survive and be able to achieve their full potential. Honorable Speaker, I want to congratulate the Minister of Defense for prudent utilization of resources appropriated to them by this House. For the first time, Honorable Speaker, they were given an unqualified opinion by the auditors when the audit report came out. And that's good news for all of us, because in the past, as a country, we have always assumed that what is given to the Kenya Army is a top secret, and therefore we don't know how to spend it. Having had an opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to go to some of the institutions, the installations, I can attest on behalf of the colleagues in Parliament and the Kenyans that for sure the Kenya Army has done and probably is one of the most successful institutions we have in this country in terms of performance, in terms of utilization of resources, and in terms of professionalism. No wonder the President is tapping into their potential and using them to instill some values and ethos to our society, hopefully that some of us will be able to pick it up from that point and make our country great again, as it should be for the good of our generations to come, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, however, I want to register my disappointment that there have been some pending bills, despite the effort by the Kenya Army. In 2019-2020 financial year, for instance, the ministry closed the year with pending bills amounting to 8.1 billion. This is against the expectation or against the assumption that most of us have that Kenya Army or the defense forces are given their money in full. Honorable Speaker, the danger with this kind of pending bill is that it exposes them. And the last thing we want to have is our army being dragged to court in the name of failing to pay their pending bills. And therefore, the danger with this kind of arrangement, pending bills, especially in an institution which is as critical as the Kenya Army, Honorable Speaker, is that they will use the first charge whenever they will get their budget will be this pending bill. Consequently, that will reduce the money they have in their budget. So we are urging the Minister of Finance to be able to move with speed and make good the pending, the outstanding money to defense, so that in due course they will be able to pay their pending bills, because these are a critical institution, and the country is as good as its army and defense, and we want to have them comfortable within our economic comfort zone, so that we are able to ensure safety and the protection to our people, even for the investors to be interested in coming to Kenya, so that they can put their resources. Honorable Speaker, the National Intelligence Services plays a critical role in providing security intelligence and counterintelligence to deal with emerging threats such as terrorism, extraordinary threats, internal and socio-political threats, environmental and regional cyber threats, among others. Despite a proposed allocation of 42.5 billion, the agency still faces budgetary constraints like any other agency. We implore upon the service to deliver with available resources given the macroeconomic constraints facing our country, such rising debt levels and ever-growing fiscal deficit. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is equally a very critical institution. But even as we speak about that, Honorable Speaker, the National Intelligence is one critical institution which overlaps almost in every department of sector of this government. They're everywhere, and their efficiency, their success, is actually going to impact on every department, every sector of this economy. Because without intelligence reports, Honorable Speaker, we have no capacity of knowing what the neighbors are doing. We have no chance of knowing what the foreigners are planning against us or for us. We have no chance, Honorable Speaker, of even developing systems to counter whatever is coming. Honorable Speaker, unknown to many Kenyans, national intelligence as an agency have done a lot for this country. During the COVID situation, they were used immensely, especially in tracking the people who are COVID positive to wherever they are for the good of the country. And yet, we all assume that that's a docket which should be handled by the Ministry of Health. But the Ministry of Health have no capacity in that sense of tracking down all the people involved or concerned so that we can bring order into the country in terms of managing the COVID situation. And when we all succeed, Honorable Speaker, we succeed as a country, and we need to do that so that we can be able to attract the foreign investors and even the local investors to have the comfort so that they can be able to do their business knowing that the big brother is watching over them in a good way to ensure that they are safe. So, Honorable Speaker, the national intelligence is one key institution that we all need to support. And I'm grateful that the budget committee has been kind within the constraint of the budget resources they have. They've been able to support them. However, they would have desired, because their proposal was, Honorable Speaker, they get about 46 billion or thereabout, so that they can be able to achieve their goal. This being a new year, and a year where we are preparing for national election, Honorable Speaker, it's critical that the NSIS is given resources and support they need to ensure that there is safety, to ensure there is order, to ensure there is protection, because they are the people who feed our intelligence services, they are the people who feed information to the police, to CID, so that they are able to act on the information they have been given. And you see, Honorable Speaker, when we started supporting them, the threats of Al-Shabaab and the other agencies have gone down drastically. Some people might say, what is it being done by NSIS, Honorable Speaker? Their work is to stop. Their work is to preempt. Their work is to ensure that it doesn't happen. But if people are waiting for things to happen, then to appreciate that NSIS is working. Honorable Speaker, me and my committee, we have had an opportunity of going to the institutions, and I will tell you, Honorable Speaker, we have never appreciated the kind of work they're doing. It's great, and we are grateful that we have the kind of people in that department, and especially under the leadership of the General, who has done a tremendous work, and we are all happy as a team, and even the resources which have been allocated to them, Honorable Speaker, has been used prudently. However, it's not enough, just like it is not enough in all the departments of our country or our economy. But we are urging the Committee of Budget and Appropriation to be able to allocate them a little more money so that they will ensure that our country is safe. Honorable Speaker, the Minister of Foreign Affairs faces uncertainties given the level of funding against the requirement for the ministry. First, the depreciation of shilling against the dollar. Because you appreciate, Honorable Speaker, that the Minister of Foreign Affairs are dealing with foreign institutions. And their operations most of the times are foreign currency based. Whenever they're sending money to our embassies, they're sending them in dollars, or they're sending them in the hard currency, the foreign currencies. And therefore they suffer the risk of fluctuation. Whenever our shilling is weakened, Honorable Speaker, that impact reduces their budget by almost 4 to 5%, depending on the fluctuation, Honorable Speaker. So we are urging the Budget Committee to be able to appropriate them some funds to cushion them on those fluctuations, because they have to get money somehow from their own savings to use in the event that the shilling has fallen or fluctuated or depreciated against the hard currencies in the world. The current arrangement was that the mission retains correction for visas, passports, and other fees, and the money was utilized to fund immigration attaches in foreign missions. Honorable Speaker, there's a feeling, and this was the proposal from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, that all the departments which are sending or seconding their officers to the embassies, they should be able to finance their operations over there, Honorable Speaker, because in their budgets, they have that provision. But unfortunately, when they send their officers, except NSIs, the rest of the departments which are sending their officers as attaches to the Minister of Foreign to the embassies, Honorable Speaker, they have had to get the Minister of Foreign Affairs to finance their operations, which eats up into their budget, Honorable Speaker, and yet again this budget has been given by the relevant department. And we think, Honorable Speaker, that all the agencies which are being represented at the embassies should be able to finance and provide for their officers. Honorable Speaker, the policy on centralization of ICT services was not possible to be implemented in foreign missions. There was need for the Minister of Foreign Affairs to be funded directly to enable them to leverage on ICT for service delivery. While the committee welcomes the shift in policy change, the addendum as submitted by the National Treasury has not provided for such resources under the program Foreign Policy and Diplomacy, Honorable Speaker. And we think whereas the government has a good vision, they want to centralize the services, but there are some critical institutions, Honorable Speaker, because of the security and because of the kind of information they're handling, the sensitivity of those information, we feel as a committee that it might help to have them given some exemptions so that they can run it independently, Honorable Speaker, from the policy that we have today of centralized service provision. Mr. Speaker, sir, the ministry has acquired some assets all over in the world, Honorable Speaker. We have some assets in some countries. We desire to have in every country, Honorable Speaker, because if you have had an opportunity of going to some of these embassies, Honorable Speaker, for example, if you go to Washington, Kenya has an asset, a very, very, very prime asset. You go to New York, Honorable Speaker, we have an asset. You go to Kinshasa, we have an asset. You go to Zambia, we are probably one of the best assets. You go to South Africa, as a country, we have an asset. But these assets, Honorable Speaker, just like any other asset you have at home, must be provided. You must have a budget to take care of their innovations and their maintenance. So we urge the government to have a budget for the same so that they can provide. Honorable Speaker, the regional development authorities require support. We either make up our mind, let them go to the counties, or we get them funded adequately so that they can do the duties they're supposed to be doing. We are already coming up with a bill as a committee to align the RDS, the regional authorities, to national government so that they can be able to achieve that which they need to achieve. Given the tight fiscal framework, we could not get resources to allocate to the departments. We call upon the National Treasury to consider the State Department for more resources should the fiscal space allow to enable them to undertake the non-funded critical activities, Honorable Speaker. With those many remarks, Honorable Speaker,
the Honorable Ole Sankok.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute in such an important function of this House, the function of budgeting and resource allocation to various ministries, departments, and agencies of the government, Honorable Speaker, which is our sole mandate here. Honorable Speaker, and there is some issues that I would like to touch. One of them is ACPO, a program started by my president, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, with very good intention to uplift the life of the vulnerable members of our society. ACPO, in full, means access to government procurement opportunities by persons with disabilities, youth, and women. Honorable Speaker, this stands at 30% of all contracts that are given out by the government, that it should be given to this group. Honorable Speaker, but persons with disabilities have been marginalized within the marginalized groups, because when issuing ACPO, Honorable Speaker, or those contracts to the three groups, they have been able to give, because women have the backing of their husbands, 25%. Youth are faster than persons with disability, so they end up having 4.5%. What only remains for persons with disability is 0.5%. Honorable Speaker, The
Honorable Millie Odhiambo, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't know whether the honorable member is in order to mislead this House. He has just said that the women are advantaged because when they're applying for ACPO, they have the backing of their husbands. Mr. Speaker is misleading the House by presuming that all the women who are applying for ACPO are married and that their husbands are able. Mr. Speaker, in what we call intersectionality, we have women who are disabled who are not married and others who are married with poor husbands. So is it in order to mislead this House?
Honorable Millie, you are absolutely right. Every woman, every man in this country is equal before the law. The Honorable Sanko?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Before I was rudely interrupted by Honorable Millie, who is a very good contributor in this House, Honorable Speaker, and very intelligent member of Parliament. But I said that majority of women have the backing of their husband. Therefore, they take 25% of the chunk that is supposed to be given to the three groups. 4.5% go to the youth, and only 0.5% remain with the person with disability. And sometimes the tenders that are given to person with disability are not economically viable. Supply of toothpick, supply of toilet papers, and supply of such things that will not economically empower them. And even on top of supplying, Honorable Speaker, they are still pending bills. Some of this well thought out program by our president to empower us have become as a curse, Honorable Speaker, because some of persons with disability have committed suicide because they have borrowed from the banks, they have done the contract that have been awarded under ACPO, Honorable Speaker, but they are not paid, and the banks are after them. They are being auctioned, and some of them have gone into even more poverty than when they applied for these tenders, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the other issue is the issue of white elephants, Honorable Speaker. That one have come out very clearly. Apart from the Mtiani House that started in 1986, Honorable Speaker, and still going on and still allocate money, and apart from other programs that have been raised from 18 million all the way to 200 million, and we are not yet there, we have not finished paying, we have a balance of 70 million, Honorable Speaker, there is this issue of standard gauge railway. Honorable Speaker, I used to see from the media saying that it is a rail to nowhere. I did not believe them until I followed phase 2B of standard gauge railway, Honorable Speaker. It ended up in a remote area called Emurtoto. The shopping center have one shop and one butchery. Honorable Speaker, if then rail to nowhere does not mean that, then I don't know what it means, Honorable Speaker. What is the catchment area of one butchery that is open only on Wednesdays and one small shop, Honorable Speaker, will be a catchment area for a rail that have ended there? Because I believe for economic viability of any infrastructure, the road or a rail, then it must start from a bigger town, end in a big town, so that there will be transportation between the two and a catchment area, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the standard gauge railway is only 12 kilometers shy of Narok. But from the Susua economic zone, we have already constructed 52 kilometers to Emurtoto, Honorable Speaker. That 52 kilometers, Honorable Speaker, is their misuse, Honorable Speaker. It is open for vandalism, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, construction of 12 kilometers will have given the standard gauge railway economic viability by opening up the Great Lake region, opening up Narok and part of northern Tanzania, and opening up South Rift, Honorable Speaker, and Central Rift, Honorable Speaker. It will be transporting wheat, barley, potatoes, animal pie products, soapstones, Honorable Speaker, and even fish from Kisumu, Honorable Speaker. But I don't know why it is stalled. I don't know if it is because of some of the MPs, and I plead with the government, and I plead with my president. If I have wronged you in any way, forgive me. Don't punish Narok residents because of some of us. If MPs from that region have joined Tanga, please don't punish the 2 million voters from that region because of some of us. Let us have the standard gauge railway be complete at least to a town. even if it is not to Kisumu, as a featured earlier, through Bomet and Kisii, then just let it fall in where roads accessibility is there. There is only motorbike access to where the standard gauge railway have ended in Memurtot. No vehicle can reach a Murtot. It's only about a motorcycle or a bicycle, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, again, I may be very notorious in speaking my mind, Honorable Speaker, but I still plead with the government. In the name of God, don't punish 6.5 million Kenyans with disability because of me. 250 million, Honorable Speaker, have been chopped from the budget of National Council for Persons with Disability. 250 million. And this is the money that goes for wheelchairs. Honorable Speaker, there are still Kenyans with disability crawling in our streets. There is a child with disability crawling into the pit latrine, the dirty pit latrine of a primary school, Honorable Speaker, and soiling their hands, Honorable Speaker, and using the same hands to eat food. The self-esteem of that child is lowered, and even passing exam become a problem, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, now we are chopping 250 million from person with disability, Honorable Speaker. Some of this money, Honorable Speaker, around 50 million, goes for sunscreen lotion to protect people with albinism from the effect of sun rays. Sun rays for person with albinism bring cancer, Honorable Speaker. We can no longer protect them because the government have chopped money from the National Council for Persons with Disability, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, some of the money that was chopped, around 30 million, was intended for school bursaries for children with disabilities, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to inform the House that as a person with disability, my only option to succeed in life is education. I cannot become a shepherd. I cannot become a watchman because they'll break my other leg that was a bit stable, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I cannot fruit mkokoteni, Honorable Speaker. My option is probably to study. If I'm blind, I become a lawyer because lawyers use their brains and mouth. Honorable Speaker, if I'm physically disabled, I become a doctor or I become a politician. And nowadays, to be an MP, you need a degree. So these people need degrees so that they can become here because they are physically disabled, but they have their mouth and they have their brain, just the way I've used my mouth without speed governor here in this House, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, but their money have been chopped. How will they get education? Honorable Speaker, lastly, the commercial attaches, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, in this country, we export nothing and import everything. No wonder our economy is going down year after year. Honorable Speaker, human resource, one brain channel to proper use is more worth than all the oil wells in Libya, Honorable Speaker. If we channel our youth, because they are very brilliant youth, into proper use by exporting labor, Honorable Speaker, into the Middle East and other countries. Because we went to Qatar. In Qatar, there are 35,000 Kenyans, migrant workers, working there. We need to export more of our laborers so that we can earn foreign exchange and also reduce this issue of unemployment. I do support, Honorable Speaker, this particular report. Thank you.
Well spoken and passionately so, the Honorable Sankok. But I do believe that the budget cannot be made or proposed with the intention to punish certain sections of the population just because of their association. Because the freedom of that association is protected under Article 36 of our own Constitution. And every one of us is allowed, is free to associate in whatever form that they may wish to. So we cannot budget with the intention to punish certain sections of our population just because they may be associating with people that for the moment we may not desire ourselves to associate with. So the budget is our budget. And the constraints may be the reasons why certain budgets have been reduced must be the exigencies of the time. But I do not believe it's because of associating with one person or the other one that may not look desirable to some quarters. So that is the way it is. The Honorable Mwakuona, the member for Undanyi.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance to first and foremost support the adoption of the report by the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the revenue and expenditure estimates for the financial year 2021-2022. Honorable Speaker, this morning I'm a proud member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, having, and of course, I must congratulate our chair, Honorable Kanini Kega, and all the members for their sacrifice and commitments towards making sure that this report comes to the House in time. Honorable Speaker, I want to speak about 2 or 3 things. One, Honorable Speaker, this year's budget is coming at a time where we are faced by a myriad of challenges. One, of course, being COVID. But having COVID with us, yes, this is unforeseen. But, Honorable Speaker, the issue of pending bills has been spoken in this House for quite a while now. I remember some 2 years ago, our President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, gave in a directive that all pending bills needed to be paid as a first charge by all ministries. Honorable Speaker, these item pending bills continue to pile, and it appears that National Treasury has not found a way of either forcing or implementing the presidential directive, making sure that pending bills have been paid. Let me pick Minister of Infrastructure and Roads, Honorable Speaker. We were told by the submissions by the committee chair that we have in excess of 90 billion in pending bills only for roads infrastructure, Honorable Speaker. These pending bills have negated the ability of the ministry to award new contracts that are extremely essential for the growth and development of this country, Honorable Speaker. You realize that we have roads that have been advertised and projects under the Ministry of Infrastructure that needs to be awarded to contractors. But because of the item pending bills, the ministry is taking its time. And they have indicated that they would want to reduce the 90 plus pending bills to some considerable levels before they award new projects, Honorable Speaker. But this brings into perspective and it makes us, some of us, analyze these pending bills, Mr. Honorable Speaker. You realize that there are areas in this country that are not beneficiaries of the so-called pending bills, meaning that the 90 or so projects, 90 or so billion shillings that have gone into implementing some projects are found in specific areas or specific regions of this country. I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, we have a region called Taita Taveta County, that the 90 plus billion shillings under pending bills, no single coin is for a project that is done in Taita Taveta County. And we have other counties that also have been marginalized in the same area. And therefore, when we hear that we cannot start new projects just because we have pending bills, this means we are continuing to disadvantage and disenfranchise some communities that have not been benefiting in the projects. And now that we have a road that has been advertised just waiting to be awarded, like I'll give an example. I have a road in my constituency that was is been advertised, the contractor has been identified, but cannot be awarded because we are waiting for pending bills to be cleared, the Honorable Speaker. The road from Musau, Mbale, Veruga, Bura Road, that is about 2.8 billion project. That the delay in awarding is because of pending bills. And we are saying, we'd rather increase these pending bills. Let us also be part of, the Kenyans who are benefiting, for projects. And let's continue adding these pending bills if we're going to balance and have equity in projects as a country. Honorable Speaker, I'm happy with my committee that has indicated that by 1st October, the National Treasury should come up with a long-term bond so that they can settle out these pending bills. we are saying that this bond should be respected, so that by that time, National Treasury should float in a bond that will pay off all pending bills, so that then we can, as a country, we can start afresh. However, we know we have the issue of debt ceiling, Mr. Speaker. They are saying we cannot do pending a new bond for infrastructure, because this will require us opening up on the ceiling of 9 trillion shillings ceiling for our national debt. Honourable Speaker, if opening the ceiling will make us get our road awarded quickly, if opening the ceiling will make Kenyans who are being affected by human-wildlife conflict be paid, if opening the ceiling will make the 70 old and above get into the safety net, if the opening of the ceiling will make projects that like Mzima 2 be awarded and done, then we are ready and willing to open this ceiling, because we cannot live in a country where some areas cannot be developed every time because of reasons of pending bills or national debt ceiling. This, as a country, must have a conversation, and going forward, National Treasury must audit all the projects that are done in this country, so that we realize what we call equity in project distribution, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I'm excited about a policy that has been mentioned by the Chair of Education on recruitment of teachers. This year's budget, Honourable Speaker, we have set aside money to hire teachers. When, as budget, we realize it is important. We would rather reduce some money from the infrastructure that is managed by PS Education, and have this money go into hiring of teachers. We'll have twin objectives that will be realized. Number one, we'll have most of our teachers get employed, and two, we'll have additional income when it comes to payee, Honourable Speaker, and therefore achieve our targets on income targets. Honourable Speaker, some areas in this country, according to the policy that they are championing, they are saying 70% of recruitment of teachers must be local. So if you're talking about a county, then 70% of the teachers must come from the local county, and therefore then 30% from diaspora or outside the county. Because we have areas, Honourable Speaker, that teachers keep complaining that every time recruitment is done, depending on who is the director and who is in charge of that education, in that county, you realize 70% comes from outside, then 30% comes from local. I can give you an example, Mr. Speaker. We have areas that all head teachers, primary head teachers, all deputies, 90% are not from the local community. And therefore it raises a lot of issues by teachers that come to us as their representatives, asking us, when are our children going to get employed, and yet they have qualifications, Honourable Speaker. Some very exciting news in this budget, this coming budget, Honourable Speaker. I want to thank the Committee of Education. What they did, they're able to look to bring to us a proposal to pay out or to buy land that is owned by Taita Taveta Teachers SACCO, that was bought in Kisauni, where my colleague Honourable Ali Bogo comes from. So they have said we approved as Budget Committee 250 million. So that we can settle the people in Kisauni, and at the same time pay the teachers, Taita Taveta Teachers SACCO, their money, because they bought land long time ago, and most of these teachers now in fact are dead. Like we lost the chair of Taita Taveta SACCO early this year. And these are people who have been pushing for their money, because their land was settled by squatters, and today it is historic that in this budget we have put in 250 million that will go to settle squatters in Kisauni, in Junda Ward. At the same time, my teachers from my county get their share, so that they can benefit from their savings, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I finish by saying we would support every idea that brings in more money to the state-funded universities. We have universities in this country that have not found enough resources to complete the projects that have been begun, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to allow my committee that in their wisdom, we're able to raise around 50 million shillings to support Taita Taveta University to finish their project, the mining lab project, that requires another about 80 million to be complete. But at least for this time to start with, we have 50 million that will go to the university to make sure that that lab will start being utilized. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Nguna Ngusia, not desiring to be in. Honorable members, the chair for agriculture was here and he had not keyed in. I will allow him to have his contribution.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be given to say something on the budget. First, I would like to thank the entire departmental committee, chair of budget, and his team and members for the good work that they have done. I also want to thank my committee for the support that they have also given us when we are doing the budget and we are looking on the issues that are there. Let me talk about agriculture, and I'll also share, as my colleagues have said, we have a lot of challenges, and we think that there's a lot of challenges that needs to be addressed. Agriculture, as everybody knows, is the backbone of this economy. Agriculture is an area that really needs to be looked into. Despite the importance of agriculture sector in its contribution to the GDP, economic growth, employment, foreign exchange, and raw materials for this industrial sector, it is grossly underfunded. And when I say grossly underfunded, it is underfunded to the tune of 25.8 billion, which I think something needs to be done, because agriculture is an area that should really be looked into, as I said earlier. The sector already having numerous ongoing and stalled projects. Implementation of the projects take too long to complete because of low budget allocations and frequent budget cuts. We also have a lot of challenges in agriculture because somebody mentioned pending bills. I don't know how we're supposed to do. A colleague of mine here has said something. If the ceiling can be removed to sort out some of these things, I think agriculture is an area that we really need to look into because of the pending bills. The department has a lot of pending bills. In the Department of Livestock, for example, they have a current pending bill of about 4.2 billion. And that one goes to halal, meat products, and also an Associate Architects Limited, which they have a pending bill of 25.9 million. In the crop sector, we have a pending bill to the tune of 10 billion. So I believe that if something could be done, some of these challenges, and in the crop sector, looking also in the cereal sector, it is really having challenges because of that. And we will also be looking and telling Treasury that they need to really work on that so that we're able to change some of these challenges that are facing the agricultural sector. We have some policy recommendations that we did in the committee. The sector is already having numerous ongoing stalled projects, as I had said earlier. The National Treasury to provide additional funding to reduce the funding gap on the budget so that the State Department, the policies under the sector, and direct drivers in the achievement of the Big Four agenda, in addition to the sector of the mainstay of the economy, contributing to approximately 61% directly, 34% and indirectly 27% GDP. The State Department the State Department to improve on the efficiency of the utilization of the development budget allocation while adhering to the relevant laws and to ensure that the projects are completed within the planned duration and the expected returns and service to achieve the soonest. On the overall expenditure of the project, the program resulting from budget cuts under the 2021 supplementary estimates, the committee proposed that this is regularized in the proposed 2021 supplementary estimates. I also want to touch a little bit on the additional requests that we were looking at. And we believe that the National Treasury allocated 1.5 million for the post-COVID economic stimulus program, on which it was not given, or rather they relocated their money, and which we felt that agriculture, being an area that grew, especially at that very tough moment, we thought that they should deserve that. Agriculture is a sector that really needs to be looked into. Like I said, pending bills, we are suffering a lot, and we need to look into it. Let me end there. Thank you so much. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Aseka, member for Huisero.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. May I take this opportunity to, first of all, thank the Budget and Appropriation Committee for a well-done job. One of the key aspects of budgeting is the adherence to Article 221 on public participation. They have confirmed that despite the COVID pandemic, they did it virtually and did receive memorandums from the public. Mr. Speaker, I draw the attention of this House to two observations. One, the issue of the pending bill, which I think it's time the executive and the National Treasury should put its foot down and address it. If you look at it, pending bills slows down economic growth. Two, pending bills also inhibits the performance of ministries. You cannot really measure the output in our government ministries and semi-autonomous government agencies. So it's an aspect that I think National Treasury should look into it. Two, I looked at also at the stalled project as a challenge, and sometimes we wonder why ministries and executive initiates new projects without completing the existing one. Case in point, Mr. Speaker, even in Huisero constituency, we have a project of Sub-County Education Office, Director's Office, which was begun in 2015. Up to now, the project is at the lintel. It has not been factored in any budgets, and this is an ISO to government and even to ministry. Mr. Speaker, to attain this, I will advise the ministry and all the National Treasury to come up and really monitor the project implementations. By so doing, they'll know which projects are on course, which projects are outside the contractual period, and they can make adjustments when they're doing the budget. Lastly, when you look at supporting the budget, the government should also look at other alternative ways of supporting these projects. As the Chair of Finance said, that we should look at implementing the PPP in many of these projects, and also government-to-government purchasing or buying, which will reduce some costs. All said and done, Mr. Speaker, I support the report. Thank you.
The Honorable Obo Mohammed, member for Lamu.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipatia na mimi nafasi nami nipate kuzungumza katika hivi vipeo vya bajeti. Mimi mwanzo nataka kupongeza kamati ya bajeti, kisha niende moja kwa moja katika hii ya kwanza ya Executive Office of the President. Hawa wanafaa kupewa pesa zaidi, hata hiyo kipeo yafaa iongezwe juu zaidi, sababu ni kazi kubwa wanafanya na ni kazi nzuri. Pia niende katika Statement Department for Interior and Citizen Services. Hapa Bwana Spika, nataka kuzungumza kwamba hawa wana kipeo kikipelekwa juu zaidi ni vizuri, kwa sababu bado tunatarajia kazi iwe mzuri zaidi, maana kuna sehemu zingine kama kule kwetu kaunti ya Lamu bado kuna watu hawana vitambulisho, kwa miaka mitatu hawapati vitambulisho, na wanao stakabadhi zile za kungojea vitambulisho. So hiyo pesa kama ni kidogo, hiyo kazi haifanyiki, hata wakiongezewa si vibaya, lakini bora kazi ifanyike, kwa sababu sisi watu wa Lamu pia ni Wakenya kama Wakenya wengine. Ile muda unamchukua mtu wa Nairobi kupata kitambulisho, hiyo ndio inafaa imchukue mtu wa Lamu kupata kitambulisho. Pia nizungumze katika upande wa ministry, Wizara ya Defense. Kusema la kweli, kule sisi Lamu ndo tunaona hii kazi yao. Vile tuko hapo kwenye boda, wanafanya kazi mzuri, na huwa tunawatarajia saa nyingine sisi hata tukienda paka pia watupitishe sehemu zingine, hatuwezi kupita peke yetu. Sasa kama kuna pesa inatakikana kupewa, wapewe hata zaidi. Kazi yao ni mzuri na tunawapongeza sana. Niende katika kuzungumza upande wa maji. Maji ni uhai. Hii wizara ya maji, hata wakiomba pesa ngapi wafaa wapewe. Hichi kipeo, yani ceiling, inafaa iende juu, wapate kuomba pesa hata nyingi zaidi. Sababu bado kuna sehemu zingine hapa Kenya bado watu wana tatizo la maji, na maji ni muhimu kwa binadamu. Sisi tunatarajia Lamu kuna mipango ambayo imekuweko, iko kwenye vitabu zaidi ya miaka 10 ya kuvuta maji kutoka Tana Delta, River Tana ilete Lamu. So natarajia katika mipango hiyo, inshallah hii pesa wameomba itakuwa Lamu iko hapo, maana yake ilikuwa iko katika mipango. Na Lamu tukiweza kubadilisha, yani kuweza kuleta maji, basi tutakuwa tumetatua matatizo ambayo tuko nayo Lamu. Tatizo letu kubwa zaidi sasa Lamu ni maji. Poti iko, wageni watakuja wengi, na hayo maji yenyewe sisi sasa hii tuna shida na maji, na wageni wakija wengi zaidi itakuwa pia maji hakuna. Lakini naona rais alilizungumza Lamu, na waziri naye amezungumza, tumeona kwa magazeti, na alizungumza kwamba rais alituambia kwamba wataangalia vile wataweza kusaidia upande wa maji ili wale kuweza kujipanga na ile poti ya Lamu. Bwana Spika, nataka kuzungumzia kuhusu afya. Hizi pesa zilizopangwa kwa afya, wenzangu watakubaliana na mimi, hata zinafaa kupangwa zaidi. Kwa sababu afya ndio kila kitu. Lao tutazingatia sisi afya hapa Kenya, basi tutakuwa tumebadilisha maisha ya binadamu. Kwa sababu afya inaingilia pande nyingi. Mimi ilikuwa sielewi vipi afya na wizara ya usafirishaji ambayo inaweza kuingiliana. Lakini baada kupelekwa katika masomo na kusoma, umeona afya iko kila upande. Hapa bunge afya iko. Ukienda kwa magari, kwa usafirishaji, afya iko. Afya iko kila pahali. So tukizingatia afya, tutakuwa tumerekebisha au tumetatua mashida ya Wakenya. Kwa hivyo afya inafaa iangaliwe vizuri, ipewe pesa mzuri, lakini pia wale wanaoshika zile pesa, yani wazitumie inavyotakikana, zisifujwe tukaribiana majina. Pia Bwana Spika, nasikitishwa na hii wizara ya agriculture kidogo hapa upande wa blue economy. Mimi nashangaa hapa hakuna pesa nyingi. Wizara hii inafaa kujijenga sasa. Inafaa kuwa na maofisi, inafaa kila kaunti ambapo kuna upande wa blue economy ijengwe sasa. Hii wizara kiangaliwa, hii upande wa blue economy ikiangaliwa vizuri, sisi tunaweza kuandika vijana kazi wengi. Mwanzo kama blue economy ikiangaliwa Lamu itaajiri watu wengi. Sasa naona pesa imewekwa kidogo, kisha tunasema tutaka kukuza blue economy. Pesa hiyo kidogo iko hapo, blue economy hatuoni. Mimi nilikuwa natarajia iwekwe pesa nyingi, tuone viwanda vya samaki, ndio kukuza blue economy, sio tu kwa kutafiti kila siku kutafiti na hatuoni mambo yakienda. So hapa ilikuwa natarajia hata kamati ya agriculture ingekuwa imeweka hapa ceiling kubwa na ikazungumzia mengi wataka kufanya upande wa blue economy. Tukaona hapa tungeandika vijana wengi sana, na tunao potential ya kuandika kuanza county 5 za coast, na pia upande wa Lake Victoria, hata Lake Naivasha. Tunaweza kujipanga vizuri na blue economy, na hii ikatuondoleshia shida kubwa ya ukosefu wa kazi. Bwana Spika, mimi hapa nataka kuwapatia wenzangu nafasi, naona time pia imeenda. Asante Bwana Spika.
Kupata skiza tune hii Waibrania 13:8, dial *811 *963#.
Yesu Kristo ni yule yule jana, leo na hata milele.
Wahibrania 13 mstari wa 8.
Ili kupata skiza tune hiyo ya Waibrania 13:8, dial *811 *963 hash *811 *963 hash.
On the next episode,
chini ya uongozi wa Rais Uhuru Kenyatta, uwekezaji katika sekta ya kilimo unaendelea kuisaidia nchi hii kuafikia malengo yake ya uzalishaji chakula cha kutosha. Wiki hii kwenye Project 254,
serikali walipokuja kuintroduce kazi ya visima, tukakuwa nafuu kwa sababu hata mifugo wetu wamepata maji. Tukarudi na tukaintroduciwa kazi ya ukulima na maji.
Mimi nimekuja nimefanya kazi hapa shambani kwa sababu mmetusaidia nipate pesa, mtoto arudi shuleni kwa sababu nimefaidika kwa hizi mashamba.
Wenzetu wametuletea elimu, kumbe ardhi inaweza toa hata ng'ombe mingi kushinda hata ile tulikuwa tunafuga.
Alhamisi saa 2:30 jioni kwenye runinga ya KBC Channel 1.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Wazee wa majanga. Hawa wanaishi kwa vituko. Mambo yao ya kubwaga majanga kila leo.
Ule mkataba ndio huu.
07-100-8-4-1000-8820.
Hizi namba zote hizi za nini?
Probox. Hii sio karatasi ya mkataba.
Game is over.
Wazungu sema it's okay.
Ordinary day. Something